Welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. It's been a long day, but I finally got everything wrapped up. Being here with you all makes me feel so relaxed and genuinely happy. It really means a lot knowing you're here with me, sharing these paranormal experiences. Thank you so much for sending in your stories. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Alright, let's get started. So, I should start with a little context, because otherwise this is going to sound like I'm jumping straight into the weirdest part. This happened when I was about 30. I was kind of a spiritual dabbler back then, curious, reading a bit of Eastern philosophy, going to the occasional meditation night, trying to make sense of life in that there has to be something more way. But I wasn't deeply committed to any one path. And then there was him. I'll call him Dylan. Dylan was into the more fringe stuff, like intense New Age rabbit holes, apparitions, channeling, aliens, all that. And he had this secretive streak that never sat right with me. He'd tell stories that didn't add up, change details, insist he'd forgotten things he'd definitely said. Little lies, big lies, just constant fog. I also knew he struggled with a compulsive sex problem, and he'd hinted at some really ugly behavior from his past that made my stomach turn. Not, I messed up and I'm ashamed, ugly. More like he wanted to shock me with it, like he liked the power of saying it out loud. That was one of the big reasons I'd reached the end of my patience. After about a year of emotional whiplash and confusion, I was done. But when I told him I was leaving, he got this look, almost smug, and said, "I just want to show you something about myself first." Not in a vulnerable way, more like he thought he had a reveal, like this was going to impress me or change my mind. And honestly, I didn't feel scared. I felt tired. I felt sorry for him. And I remember thinking, fine, let him have his little moment, then I'm gone. So I stayed. He had us sit on the floor, facing each other. He said he was going to meditate, and I was just supposed to watch. The room was quiet. No music, no candles, none of the usual dramatic stuff. Just him, cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Maybe a minute passed, maybe two. Time got slippery after that. And then, this is the part I can still see as clearly as if it happened yesterday. He opened his eyes and looked right at me. His eyes were wrong. Not just the pupils, not like they were dilated. I mean all of it. The iris, the whites, everything was pitch black, like two perfectly smooth, bottomless pools. No reflection, no life, no human in them at all. And at almost the exact same moment, the room felt colder. Not like I got goosebumps because I was nervous, like the temperature dropped, sharply, as if someone had opened a door to winter. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He didn't move. He just stared at me with those black eyes. And I need you to understand, I didn't have time to build theories or talk myself into anything. It wasn't like, oh, this could mean X or Y. It was instant, like information landing whole in my body. Whatever was looking at me wasn't Dylan. It felt ancient, and it felt hateful. Not personal hatred like someone being mad at you. Bigger than that. Like a cold, vast contempt for people, for humanity. The sensation was so intense it was almost physical, like pressure in the air. And with that came this strange, simultaneous knowing. It wanted to harm me. It wanted to harm us. But it couldn't. Not because it didn't feel powerful, because it did, but because it was blocked, restricted, like there were rules it couldn't break in that moment. I remember feeling grateful in the middle of the fear, which is such a strange combination, like my whole body was saying, "This is real, and you are held." I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds? A minute? Time didn't behave normally. It felt like it could go on forever if I just sat there. Finally, I spoke, because I realized he was going to keep staring as long as I let him. I said, very calmly, almost like I was talking to someone misbehaving, "Okay, okay, that's enough." And as I said it, I reached out and touched his arm. And that was the second shock. Normally, Dylan was kind of wiry, light build, jittery energy, always tapping a foot or shifting his posture. But when I touched him then, it was like touching something solid in a way people aren't solid. Like stone, like a statue that couldn't be budged. There was no softness, no warmth, no sense of a living body responding. It was the strangest tactile feeling I've ever had, this absolute, immovable density. Then he looked away. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and when he opened them again, they were normal, brown, human. His face softened. His arm felt like an arm again. The coldness in the room lifted, like someone turned the temperature back to ordinary. He blinked a few times, and then, with this self-satisfied little tone, he went, "So, what did you think?" And I went into this dry, protective mode I get when I'm trying not to escalate something with someone unstable. I said, "Well, whatever that was, I wouldn't invite it to dinner." That's it. No long conversation. No debate. No giving him anything to twist into a fantasy about being special or chosen. Because I already knew, if I told him how terrifying it was, he'd turn it into a compliment. If I told him how real it felt, he'd make it into a story where he was powerful and important. And I didn't want to feed that. I just wanted out of that room, out of his orbit, back into my own life. I left not long after, and I never went back. Even now, years later, I don't pretend I have a neat explanation for what happened. I've heard people talk about black-eyed phenomena, and I've read that some religious folks interpret it as demonic. Other people have different frameworks. I'm not married to a theory. What I know, what I still know in my bones, is that something looked at me through him that night, and it hated us. And it couldn't touch what it hated. And if you've ever experienced anything even remotely like that, you know exactly what I mean when I say, the knowing arrives all at once, and it doesn't ask permission from your skepticism. It just lands. So, I'm 43 now, and I live out in Oregon. And a few years back, my life didn't just get hard. It cracked right down the middle. It was 2020, the kind of year where everything already felt cursed. And then, in my personal world, it all fell apart in one brutal sweep. My closest friend, Marissa, lost her fight with cancer. My brother packed up and moved clear across the country with his kids. And that same day, like the universe wanted to really make sure I understood the message, my old cat, Jasper, who'd been with me forever, died too. It sounds dramatic when you say it out loud, but it genuinely felt like something reached in and pulled out every emotional support beam I had left. And I wasn't starting from a healthy place. I've carried heavy stuff my whole life: abuse, anxiety, depression, addiction. The kind of baggage you learn to smile over so people don't ask questions. But when that pile of grief hit all at once, I didn't rise to meet it. I folded. I disappeared inside myself. At first, I told myself I was just trying to get through the days. My friend had been on morphine at the end, and there was some left behind. I started taking it. Then it ran out, and I didn't stop. I just switched tracks. I found fentanyl on the street, and the spiral was fast. It always is. One minute you're coping, and the next minute you're not really living anywhere. You're just hiding inside your own body, trying not to feel. Eventually, pneumonia almost killed me. I remember this one night so clearly it still makes my stomach tighten. Feverish, barely breathing, sweating through the sheets, and honestly thinking, this might be it. I couldn't even work up the energy to cry. I just laid there and whispered into the dark. Not a fancy prayer, not a religious moment, just this quiet, desperate thought like, please, someone help me. Anything. Anyone. And here's the part that still makes me feel weird even saying it. Something answered. I felt the mattress dip beside me, slow, heavy, deliberate, like a person sitting down carefully. But there were no footsteps, no breath, no rustle of clothes, just presence. Thick, focused, intentional. After that night, my house didn't feel like my house anymore. I'd adopted a newer cat not long before. Her name was Poppy, and she used to sleep right next to me, always. But after that, she wouldn't go into my bedroom. She'd stop at the doorway like she hit a wall, frozen, eyes wide, and her head would track something I couldn't see, like she was watching it cross the room. Then it started happening in the rest of the house. Little things at first, shoes tipping over on their own, small objects not being where I left them. And the whispers. I don't mean voices having full conversations. I mean like the edges of sound brushing past your ear when the room is supposed to be quiet. Enough that you turn your head, thinking someone's behind you. And then one morning I woke up and my ceiling fan, had come loose. It was hanging over my bed by one cord. I sat up and stared at it like my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Because how does that happen quietly? How does that happen without shaking the whole ceiling? I just remember thinking, if that had dropped. After that, the shadows started. At first, it was like flickers in the corner of my eye, the kind you try to explain away. Sleep deprivation, drugs, stress, whatever. But it didn't stay subtle. But the moment I can't shake, the moment that branded itself into my memory, happened at the stairs. I was standing at the top of the staircase, looking down into the living room. It was dim, not pitch black, just that low light you get at night when you haven't turned everything off. And this shadow thing started moving. Fast, chaotic, almost playful in the creepiest way, jumping from the couch to the chair, darting, swinging, like it was using the furniture as a playground. And it moved with this speed and smoothness that made my whole body go cold. And right then, right at that exact moment, Poppy came running up beside me and pressed herself hard against my leg. She was rigid, trembling, staring straight down the stairs. We stood there together, me and my cat, watching it. And in that moment, something in me just broke in a different way. Because I could argue with my own mind all day. I could tell myself I was imagining it. But my cat wasn't imagining it. She saw it too. After that, it felt like my inner light dimmed, like something inside me got smothered. I wasn't just depressed. My spirit felt shut off, like someone had pulled a heavy blanket over my soul. I tried everything people suggest when they don't really know what else to say. Sage, crystals, salt in the corners. I even went to this little metaphysical shop and met a woman who used a pendulum and talked about energy fields. She told me, gently, that something was there, but it wouldn't respond to her. And yeah, plenty of people assumed I was losing it. They blamed drugs, psychosis, paranoia. Obviously, don't create moving shadows that animals react to in real time. That's not how it works. And deep down, I knew what I was living with wasn't just in my head. Eventually, I found a place called a shamanic healing center outside Portland, and I met a guy named Eli. Talking to him felt like finally meeting someone who wasn't trying to translate me into something easier to dismiss. He said he sees attachments most often when someone's energy is shattered. Huge trauma, grief, addiction, or people who are around death and chaos constantly. First responders, people who do cleanup jobs, people who live near the edge for too long. He told me he wasn't born into a lineage. He'd trained with healers in South America after going through his own nightmare years earlier out in the desert. When I got there, he had me lie down on a table. He held a pendulum over my body, over what he called the energy centers. And it didn't move. Not once. Not even a tremble. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't act impressed. He just said, very calmly, that everything was blocked. That when the whole system is shut down like that, it usually means something heavy is clamped on. Then he started. And I swear, the air changed. Like the room thickened. My body started swaying even though I was lying still. There was fast whispering in my ears, panicked and messy, like a rush of voices I couldn't quite understand. When he worked near my chest, especially on the left side, where the pneumonia had hit me hardest, it felt like pressure pushing back, like something didn't want to let go. At one point, when he moved to my hand, I felt a tug at one finger so distinctly I jerked. He paused and said he needed to clear that spot again, like whatever it was had grabbed hold there. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The whispering vanished. The pressure lifted. The air felt normal again, like someone opened a window inside my body. He told me it was gone, sent back where it belonged. And I just started crying. Not because I was scared, because I could breathe again, like my soul had been holding its breath for years without me realizing it. I left there feeling lighter, clearer, like something inside me had been unclenched. The next day, I checked into rehab. I stayed about a month. I got sober. And now, almost 2 years later, I'm rebuilding my life in a way I honestly didn't believe I'd ever get the chance to. I do hot yoga most days. I keep my home calm and protected in ways that make sense to me. I live with boundaries now, real ones, not just the kind you say you have. Do I still battle addictive patterns? Yeah, I'm human. That part doesn't magically vanish. But I will never go back to opioids. I will never go back to that darkness. Because whatever happened in that room with Eli, it didn't just remove something from me. It woke me up. It relit something. And I don't care who rolls their eyes at that. I know what my life felt like before, and I know what it felt like after. It was a turning point, a resurrection, honestly. And I'm still grateful, deeply grateful, that there are people out there willing to step into the frightening, invisible parts of other people's suffering. The parts that get mocked, the parts that get dismissed, the parts you're told are just in your head while you're drowning. Some people choose to walk toward that darkness anyway, carefully, bravely, so someone like me can find their way back. Okay, so this is one of those things I've told a few people over the years, and every time I say it out loud, I still get that same weird, cold little twist in my stomach. It was early summer, 2017, not long before it really starts staying light late into the evening. I remember it was a Tuesday because I'd had a pretty ordinary day, and I was doing that familiar drive back toward Frome, coming from Wells instead of Shepton Mallet. The sky was in that golden, end of day but not dark yet stage, you know? Still bright, clear visibility, nothing dramatic about the weather at all. And then I came around a bend, and something up ahead just grabbed my attention so hard, it felt like my whole body clicked into alert mode. Right there in the distance, above the tree line, was what looked, honestly, exactly like a tall, dark tower block. A proper rectangular silhouette, and it had these rows of glowing orange squares, like windows lit up from inside. They weren't steady either. They flickered in that unmistakable way fire flickers. Not like a reflection, not like the sun hitting something. It looked structured, built, real, like a high-rise burning. My first reaction was panic. Immediate, instinctive panic. Because the only thing my brain could label it as was a tower block of flats on fire. I slowed down and started trying to figure out where it could even be, whether I needed to turn off, whether there was some way to get closer or call for help. And then, just a few seconds later, this other thought hit me, hard. There aren't any tall buildings out there. Not like that. Not anywhere near that stretch. No skyline. No blocks of flats. Nothing even close to the size and shape of what I was staring at. As soon as that sank in, the panic drained away and got replaced by confusion. Like, wait, what am I looking at then? I kept driving, and it kept showing up through gaps in the trees. Every time it reappeared, it looked the same. That tall, black silhouette, those glowing orange windows, that flickering firelight effect. And the strangest part was how it behaved in the distance. It stayed in the same place on the horizon. It didn't seem to get closer, didn't drift away. It was just there, on and off for a few miles. My partner Ellie was with me, and this matters because I wasn't quietly spiraling in my own head. Ellie saw it too. We both reacted at the same moment. Both went, "What the hell is that?" We described it the same way without prompting each other, like a burning tower, windows lit orange, flickering like flames. We kept checking it, trying to catch a clean view, trying to line up where it must be. I remember thinking, if I can just get to an open stretch, I'll finally see it properly and this will make sense. So I followed the road the way I thought would give the clearest angle. And then, this is the part that still messes with me. It wasn't that it faded. It didn't stretch into a cloud shape. It didn't dim like a reflection would. It was simply gone. Like someone had just removed it. One moment it was there, the next moment it wasn't. No transition, no explanation. When we got home that night, I went straight into detective mode. I searched for fire reports. I checked local news. I scrolled social media. I tried different search terms. Fire near Froome. Smoke scene a road. Anything. Nothing. No reports, no photos, no emergency response chatter. And we hadn't seen smoke in the sky either. No sirens. No glow on the ground. Nothing to match something that looked that big. Then the next morning, the TV was already on downstairs. I came in half asleep, glanced up, and my stomach dropped. Because on the screen was news coverage of the Grenfell Tower fire in London. And visually, just visually, it was the first thing I'd ever seen that matched what I'd been trying to understand the night before. That dark tower shape, the orange glowing window patterns, that flickering, fire-lit look. I want to be really clear about something, because I'm not trying to make it into something it isn't. I'm not saying I saw Grenfell. I'm not claiming anything supernatural or connected. The timing doesn't even match. It was hours earlier than the London fire started. I'm only telling you why it lodged itself in my mind so deeply. Because suddenly there was this real-world image that looked eerily like the thing we'd seen, and it made it impossible to just shrug off. That day was awful, obviously, because the news was horrifying. And then I had this private, confusing experience sitting on top of it like a weight. Talking to people felt strange. When I cautiously mentioned what I'd seen, some people suggested it was a trick of light, or a mirage, or just my brain pattern matching. A couple of people even said the word hallucination, which, honestly, made me question myself for a while. But I always come back to one simple fact. I wasn't alone. Ellie was with me the entire time. Ellie saw it too. Same timing, same reaction, same description, same, that looks like a burning tower instinct. We talked about it as it was happening, and even now, years later, when we describe it separately, the details still line up. So whatever it wasn't just in my head. And that's why I'm telling you this, because I would genuinely love a rational explanation. I want one. I think it would actually be a relief. For context, this was along the A361, heading toward Frome, near the stretch of hill and dual carriageway leading up to the Nunny Catch roundabout. Give or take a bit, because it's been years, but that's the area. And I still wonder, has anyone else ever had a shared, crystal-clear visual experience? Something you both saw at the same time that made absolutely no sense and never got explained? This all happened out near the Olympic Woods, over a few years, starting around 2021, and honestly, it was one of the messiest seasons of my life. I was losing pieces of myself. Everything I thought I had under control, my body, my mind, my plans, just slid right out from under me. And yeah, I'm the kind of guy who tries to reason things out first. I'm not a follower, never have been. I keep my distance from institutions, from official stories, from people telling me what's true. I've always leaned toward freedom and solitude. So when weird things started happening out there, green pulsing lights, shapes where there shouldn't be shapes, faces seeming to press out of bark like the trees were watching back, I fought myself hard not to jump to conclusions. But I also couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. Before any of the strangest stuff, I need to tell you something heavy, because it matters. A few months before my big accident, I was done. Like, done. I had a handgun in my hand. I'd already made peace with it in my head, closed my eyes, thought about my kids first. Then I thought about my animals, what they'd do if they found me like that. And my finger was where it shouldn't have been. And then my phone rang. I ignored it at first, but it kept going. And something, call it instinct, call it the universe, call it whatever you want, made me open my eyes and look. It was my aunt, Mara. I hadn't spoken to her in years. We weren't close. We weren't even okay. But I answered, and she talked me down, piece by piece, like she was holding my face in her hands through the phone. I'm still here because she called. I still don't fully understand why she did that night, or why I picked up. Even now, that dark thought visits, not as a plan, more like a shadow that sometimes crosses the room. But I know what it is now. I know I can survive it. And the thing is, I'd already died once before all this. It was late 2021, one night close to midnight. Blood clot, heart event. Then everything went sideways. Lungs, seizures, the whole nightmare chain reaction. I remember the moment I wasn't here anymore, and I'm telling you straight, whatever is on the other side felt clean, quiet, like taking off a heavy pack you didn't realize you'd been carrying your whole life. Then, after that, it was like my body kept rolling dice it shouldn't have survived. A stroke not long after. Then a nasty infection, MRSA, turning into sepsis. People don't always come back from that. Somehow, I did. And before all of that, my back had already betrayed me. Surgery, pain, working myself into the ground, juggling too much, trying to hold up a life that was already collapsing. Custody stress, court stress, money stress, no sleep, no room to breathe. Just grind until something inside you snaps. Then came the part that still stings the most in a regular human way. I lost my housing. Fast. Like the world decided I didn't get to pause. I sold the place I'd fought for, and watched the money drain into other hands. And suddenly, I was living out of a beat-up motorhome with nowhere steady to put it. For a while, I hid out in the mountains near a tiny Oregon town. Then later, I found a rough patch of land outside a place called Hoodsport. Getting the rig up that driveway was pure misery. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I spent nearly a week tilted like I was about to roll, sleeping crooked, eating like an animal, trying to keep my nerves from snapping. Then winter hit. I got frostbite. I'd collapse into the snow and just lie there, face down, too tired to move, begging for an ending that wouldn't come. I made torches out of whatever I had, clothes, fuel, branches, just to move around at night. I had a run-in with a cougar close enough to make my skin crawl even now, and around then, I saw the first green light. Not like a flashlight, not like a reflection, like a living pulse, hovering where it shouldn't hover, breathing green in the dark. I told myself I was exhausted, that my brain was misfiring, that survival does weird things to perception. But it didn't stop. Later, after I'd scraped my way into something that resembled stability, I had a night that still sits in my chest like a stone. I was sitting out on my porch in the pitch-black forest, alone. No streetlight, no neighbor glow, just trees and blackness. I clicked on my flashlight, expecting nothing. And there, against the woods, was the outline of a woman's face. Not a full body, just a face, huge, like it was pressed into the air itself. 2 feet across, maybe. The weirdest part was how it looked camouflaged, like it was trying to be invisible, blending with the leaves and shadows. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Her eyes were closed, calm, almost solemn. And on her forehead were 3 dots in a triangle, 2 low, 1 above. I shut the light off. My heart was hammering. I waited, told myself, okay, breathe. You're imagining it. Then I turned it back on. Still there, clearer even. I'm not religious. I don't do church. I don't do God the way people mean it most of the time. But I do talk to the universe sometimes. I meditate. I pay attention to nature because nature doesn't lie. And for reasons I can't explain, that face pulled my mind toward this old story I'd read once, about a kind of mother of the world figure from India. I won't pretend I'm an expert. I'm not. But the description I found later, this idea of something feminine showing up when chaos hits, something tied to nature, felt uncomfortably aligned with the state I was in. I never decided what she was, just that she was there. Then came the accident. There'd been an emergency call. Someone hurt up on the mountain, and rescuers lost signal. I knew the terrain better than most people, and I had a heavy ATV, the kind that could crawl where other vehicles couldn't. So I went looking. I remember trying to edge away from a drop-off, and then the machine started tipping. Slow at first, like a nightmare in delayed motion. Then there was no stopping it. I tried to jump. Didn't matter. I went down and ended up underneath it. Rocks below, weight above. The engine still running, heat burning into my hip. My body folded in a way a body isn't meant to fold. I knew my leg was shattered without even looking. I couldn't move the machine. I could barely breathe right. I screamed until my voice broke. Hours, sun dropping, sweat pouring out of me until I was empty and shaking. And the only reason I'm alive is because a guy and his little kid, who weren't even sure why they'd wandered that direction, heard something that didn't sound right and followed it. They lifted the ATV enough to free me, then ran for help. I was left there alone again, in the dark coming in, trying to line up a leg that felt like it wasn't attached right anymore, like it was made of wet rope. Animals moved somewhere nearby, branches, rustling. And I'll admit it, I thought about ending it right there. I was carrying a sidearm. It would have been easy. Instead, I fired a shot into the night to scare whatever was out there away. Eventually, I saw headlights. Paramedics. Relief that didn't feel like relief yet, because the pain was still everything. The local hospital took me in anyway. Midnight-ish. Still no real pain control until I was already drowning in it. X-rays, surgery, more damage than they first saw. Plates, rods, stitches, long cuts down my leg to relieve pressure. Weeks of immobility. Then a rehab facility that didn't want to let me go because I had nowhere safe. When I finally got back, my place had been invaded by mice. My bed, my space, everything. And I was trapped there with a broken leg, no transport, and no money. That's when the normal world would have been enough to break most people. But out there, it didn't stop at normal. Months later, I was working in the woods near my spot, trying to carve out a path for a small shed I wanted to build. There's a spring-fed stream nearby, and I noticed this hole, like a tunnel mouth. Not huge, but big enough to feel wrong, like the earth had a throat. I started digging a ditch to guide water into a low spot, thought I could make a little pool. And then the ground opened, like it gave up, like it sighed and collapsed. Water dumped in like a drain pulled in a bathtub. Insects poured out. This sour, ancient smell rolled up from below. Wet stone and rot and something else I can't name. It connected to that other tunnel. A cave system. Under my feet. Under my life. I tried to stuff it closed with rocks and logs, but you can't really argue with the ground when it decides to open. Later that same day, I went up to a place I call my sanctuary. Upstream, waterfalls, a calmer pocket of woods where I'd been shaping a natural pool. And I saw movement. Something dark, quick, threading between trees above me. I looked forward again and realized I wasn't alone. There were shapes around me, humanoid but not solid, like heat shimmer, like the outline of something wearing invisibility. If you've ever seen the Predator movie, it looked like that. Translucent, cloaked, barely there until your eyes caught the distortion. My dog froze, tail straight, alert like a spear. Then she bolted, chasing something into the trees. I grabbed my pistol without even thinking. Not dramatic, just reflex. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was leaning in. I'd seen one of those shimmering figures once before, the previous winter, and that time it felt almost neutral, like it was observing. There'd been that green pulsing light nearby then too, but this time felt different, crowded, pressuring, like I'd stepped into the wrong room. So I left. That night I cracked a frozen window behind my couch to smoke, and the feeling came back hard. And then I started hearing it. Branches snapping on both sides of my place. Not little twigs, big breaks. Like something strong was moving through trees without caring if it made noise. Every few minutes. For hours. Then tapping. Metallic. Not random wind stuff. It felt deliberate. Like something testing my walls. I fired a warning shot into the hillside. Not at anything I could see, just to say, I'm here. Don't come closer. It didn't matter. The sounds kept going, and I didn't sleep. Instead, I started searching online, trying to find anything that matched what I'd seen. And I fell into a rabbit hole I didn't even know existed. Reports of glimmer beings, cloaked shapes, people calling them glimmermen, stories tied to wilderness disappearances, maps full of clusters near water and caves and national forest land. And I remember sitting there, screen glow on my face, feeling my throat tighten. Tears I didn't expect. Because I realized the terrifying part wasn't, I'm imagining this. The terrifying part was, what if I'm not? For weeks after that, I barely stepped outside. Not more than a few steps from my door. Not at night. Not unless I had to. And then the weather turned ugly anyway. snow and cold that kept the world locked down. I found a strange, scratched circle in the dirt near the house, and a face in a tree, one of those bark pattern things that suddenly looks like a staring expression. But this one wasn't there before, and once you see it, it feels like it's still there, even when you look away. After that, life kept grinding me down in normal ways too. Vehicles failing, being stranded again, trying to survive with a leg that wasn't fully mine anymore. But the other stuff kept threading through it. Objects moved, things appearing where I swear they hadn't been. Branches planted upright like someone placed them. Little odd gifts left in my garden beds. And the energy, this is the strangest part. It didn't always feel violent. Sometimes it felt almost childish, like curiosity, like something wanting attention. And I know how that sounds. I do. I've had weird experiences my whole life, things that don't fit neatly into the world people agree on. But those years on that mountain, that was the loudest it's ever been, the most relentless. Like the wilderness wasn't just wilderness anymore. It was a living, watching thing. And I'll be honest with you, somewhere in all of it, I lost parts of my mind. Or maybe I found parts I didn't want to meet. I've done things in my past I'm not proud of. I've carried guilt like a second spine. And sometimes I wonder if this is what it looks like when life forces you to face yourself. When it strips you down until you're just a human animal in the woods, trying to make meaning out of pain. Here's what I know for sure. I don't fear death the way I used to. I've stared at it too many times. Heart failure, infection, being pinned under metal on rocks in the dark, predators in the trees, real ones with claws and teeth. I've lived around cougars and coyotes and wolves, and I've had half-wild cats curled up close enough to feel their breath at night. Fear doesn't own me the way it used to, but uncertainty, that's the harder one. Because sometimes I think that woman's face, the one in the forest, had something to do with the accident. Not as punishment, more like a hard course correction. Like life grabbing me by the collar and turning me back toward something I'd forgotten. And what I keep coming back to is this. Out there, away from cities and noise and distractions, you start to feel how thin reality is, how much we ignore, how much our ancestors probably noticed because they had to. In modern life, we chase comfort. Out there, you chase truth. Or at least, you chase what's real enough to keep you alive. Lately, things have been quieter. I meditate every day. I try to stay steady. I'm still fighting the system stuff, paperwork, disability claims, scraping by on temporary assistance, waiting on decisions that can change your whole life with a single letter. And I can't tell you what the universe wants from me. Some days it feels like it wants me to surrender. Other days it feels like it wants me to stay stubborn and alive out of sheer spite. All I know is, I'm still here. And even when nothing dramatic is happening, even when it's quiet, there are 1,000 tiny moments that don't make sense until you look back and realize they were connecting into something. So that's why I'm telling you, not to convince you, just so someone else knows what it felt like to live through it. Okay, so I've got to start by saying this. As a kid, my brain was basically a horror movie factory. When I was little, like elementary school through early teens, I used to see and hear the weirdest stuff. Shadowy shapes that looked like they were sliding down the stairs. A tall, washed-out woman just standing at the foot of my bed. And sometimes I'd hear someone say my name super clearly, like right by my ear. But honestly, I'm pretty sure a lot of it was me. I was a scared, anxious kid who loved creepy stories, and I was alone in the house a lot because my mom worked late. So I'd sit there, listening to every tiny sound, asking myself 1,000 what-if questions until my stomach hurt. We lived in this tiny, older apartment. Creaky wood floors, thin walls, pipes that knocked like they were mad at you. Everything groaned and shifted and popped, and my imagination just filled in the blanks. And our building had this heavy feeling to it. The unit next to ours had this awful story attached to it. My mom used to whisper about it to my aunt like it was something you weren't supposed to say out loud. The neighbor, a woman named Mary Ann, passed away in there, and nobody realized for a long time. Weeks. And her adult son, Eli, who needed a lot of help, was still inside the apartment because he didn't understand what to do or how to get help. Even typing that out makes my skin prickle. Then after that, someone else moved in. This quiet lady named Saskia, and she lasted like barely a month. And then she just vanished. Not moved out, vanished. Her stuff was still there, her shoes by the door, a coat on a hook, even her little dog's leash hanging on a chair like she'd be right back. But she never came back. So yeah, that place already felt haunted, even before my brain started making its own special effects. I lived there until I was about 15, and then we moved. And the move should have ended everything. We ended up in this really modern 3-story house in a clean, bright neighborhood. New wiring, smooth floors, none of that old building creaking. It didn't smell like dust and damp wood. It smelled like paint and laundry detergent. It felt normal. My room was on the top floor, tucked away next to a storage room, with my own little bathroom right there. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe at night, like I didn't have to be on high alert. And the weird stuff, the shadows, the voices, stopped. I started sleeping better. I stopped checking corners. I stopped flinching when a cabinet popped or the house settled. I thought I'd outgrown it. And then, one night, about a year ago, so I'm 19 now and I was 18 then, it happened. It was late, around 11. Everybody was asleep. The house was quiet in that way where you can hear the refrigerator humming and your own footsteps feel too loud. I remember I wanted something small, like cereal or chips, I don't even know. I just remember being half awake and craving a snack. So I open my door and step out, and I start going down the first set of stairs, from the top floor down to the second floor where my parents' room is. Their door was shut. Everything was dark, no movement, just that sleepy, safe silence. And I keep going down to the next set of stairs, the ones that lead to the main floor. So as I'm going down, I glance at that door, and I see a face. A woman's face. She's peeking around the edge of the door, like she's playing some kind of game. And I swear to you, I saw it so clearly that my brain didn't even have time to decide if it was scary yet. She was pale, like sickly pale. Her eyes were wide open, like she was trying not to blink. And her mouth was pulled into this big, stretched smile that didn't look happy. It looked strained, wrong, like the smile was being held in place. Her hair was long and thin and kind of stringy, hanging down like she'd been standing in the rain and never dried off. And the second my eyes locked on her, she snapped back behind the door. Just gone, like she'd been caught. I stopped dead on the stairs. And here's the part that freaks me out the most. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't even feel that jolt of panic right away. I just froze, like my whole body went quiet. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, staring at that door, telling myself, "You're tired. You imagined it. You're halfway asleep. Don't be dramatic." Then I forced myself to move. I went down the rest of the steps, slowly, like if I moved too fast I'd make it real. I looked into the hallway, looked into the kitchen. Nothing. The door was still there. The house was still quiet. Everyone was still asleep. No one. But I have never been able to shake it. Because all the stuff I saw as a kid always had this dreamlike quality, like foggy shapes, faceless figures, stuff that even in the moment felt kind of unreal. This was different. This looked like an actual person. Like I could have described her wrinkles, the texture of her skin, the way the light caught the curve of her cheek. It had that awful, specific realism, pores and all, that you don't get from a blurry childhood fear. And I haven't seen her again. Not once. But every time I walk down those stairs at night, I feel it. That little hesitation, that instinct to keep my eyes forward. Because part of me is terrified that I'll glance at that door and she'll be there again, peeking like she's been waiting. I've never been the type to truly believe in paranormal stuff. Like, I'm the first person to say, "It was your imagination," or "Your brain was tired." But after that, I started looking things up, just out of curiosity at first, and I found people talking about this exact kind of thing. Like this idea of a peeking presence, something that watches from behind door frames or around corners. And now I'm stuck with this question that I hate even saying out loud. Am I losing it? Or did something follow me? So, I've been searching for years, honestly, just trying to find anyone who's been through something even close to what I've experienced. I've seen people talk about tapping on windows, sure, but the way it happens to me has always felt different. And I've put off telling the story forever because it's hard to explain, and it makes me feel stupidly scared, even just saying it out loud. I think it started when I was about 13, maybe 14. That was also the start of a really rough stretch in my life, which I bring up because sometimes I wonder if that matters. But the first time it happened, I remember it so clearly. I'd be lying in bed at night, not at any specific time, just night, and I'd hear 3 sharp taps on my bedroom window. Always 3. Not a scratching sound, not a branch brushing glass. 3 clean, precise knocks. The best way I can describe it is fingernails, like the hard edge of nails clicking against the pane. I've even tried to recreate it before by tapping on things myself, and I can get close, but when it happens for real, it's colder, sharper, like it has intention. And the fear that hits me, it's immediate, like my whole body locks up before my brain even catches up. I'd go totally still, heart pounding, skin prickling, like someone just dumped ice water through my veins. I've been scared in my life, obviously, but nothing feels like that. It's not normal fear. It's like something in me recognizes it as wrong. Before anyone asks, yeah, I was on the first floor. And no, there weren't trees or bushes near the window. No vines, no branches, nothing that could reach it. Just a mostly empty backyard. We had 2 dogs back then too, Rusty and Miso, usually outside or hanging out in the garage, and the garage had a door that opened into the yard. I keep coming back to that detail because it feels like they should have reacted, right? Barked, growled, at least moved. But I don't remember them reacting at all. Not once. The tapping kept happening for years, and what made it worse is that it had no pattern, no schedule, nothing I could tie it to. Sometimes it wouldn't happen for weeks, and I'd almost start to feel like maybe it was over. And then one night, 3 taps. Other times I'd spend a whole week thinking about it non-stop, dreading bedtime, basically bracing for it every night. And nothing. Like it refused to follow my expectations. Completely random. Which somehow made it feel more deliberate. I know how this sounds, so I'll say this. I'm not the only one who heard it. My friend Lena slept over once, back when we were in high school, and it happened. I remember looking at her in the dark like, please tell me you heard that. And she just whispered, yeah. She was pale, quiet, not joking. My mom also claimed she heard it one night when I fell asleep on the couch. Behind the couch was this huge sliding glass door. Same deal, 3 taps, sharp and fast. She didn't make a big thing of it, but the way she said it wasn't like she was humoring me. Here's the part that people always ask about. Did I look? No, I never looked. I just couldn't. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, eyes wide open, terrified that if I turned my head, even a little, I would see something I couldn't unsee. And my imagination was bad enough already. I didn't want to feed it anything real. There was one time, though, one stupid, brave, awful time, when I did something back, and immediately it started tapping again. Fast, frantic, aggressive. Not 3 taps, not neat, just rapid fire, like someone drumming fingernails against the glass. I shot out of bed, and I swear, this is the part that still makes my stomach flip. I felt like it tracked me, like the tapping shifted with where I was in the room. I moved left, and it sounded like it moved. I moved again, and it matched me, like it knew exactly where I was. I bolted out of the room and went straight to my parents, half crying, half furious at myself for answering it. My dad went outside with a flashlight, checked the yard, checked the fence line. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, no prankster friend hiding behind something. Just darkness and quiet. I had to go back to my room afterward, which felt horrible, like walking back into a place that didn't belong to me anymore. But it didn't come back that night. After that, I made myself a promise. Don't engage. Don't challenge it. Don't acknowledge it. Pretend it doesn't exist. Here's the problem, though. If it was just the house, some weird settling sound, some pressure thing with windows, whatever, you'd expect it to stop when I moved. It didn't. It followed me. Not to every place, but to enough that I can't shrug it off as one specific window with one specific issue. I moved a few times as I got older. One apartment, then another. I even lived in Japan for a while. Small place, different building, different everything. And it still happened there at least once. Same 3 taps, same icy terror. Now I'm living in my in-laws' house. Very religious, very bless this home, crosses on the wall, the whole vibe. And it hasn't happened here yet, which should make me feel better, but instead it's like I keep waiting for it to remember where I am. The last time I heard it was before my son was born. It's been about 2 years. For a while, I let myself hope it had finally moved on. Like maybe it lost interest. Like maybe I outgrew it. But the past few days, I've been having non-stop nightmares. Not even always about tapping, just heavy, ugly, relentless dreams where I wake up tense and sweating. And there's this feeling under it all, this awful certainty in my chest, like something is approaching. I hate saying that because it sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. It feels like the calm right before something returns. And I've tried, believe me, to talk myself into a rational explanation. Anxiety, depression, stress, some kind of sleep-related thing. I want it to be that. I want it to be my brain playing tricks on me. But I keep coming back to the fact that I wasn't the only one who heard it. So I'm telling you, finally, because I need to know, has anyone else ever dealt with something like this? 3 taps, fingernail sharp, random, followed across places, and that horrible, unmistakable feeling that whatever it is, wants you to notice it. So, there's this little college tucked into the hills in northern Maryland, just a few miles below the Pennsylvania line. When you drive in, it looks like it belongs on a postcard. Stone buildings, big trees, That kind of calm, old-world quiet. The campus is called St. Bridget's College, and right behind it, up the slope at a higher elevation, is this shrine people come to visit. Locals just call it the Grotto. And here's the thing, during the day, it's all peaceful. You'll see visitors walking slowly, hands folded, whispering prayers. But at night, well, at night, the place feels like it remembers too much. I went there in the early 90s, 91 to 95, and back then, the whole area was still mostly rural. Cornfields, narrow roads, fog settling low in the mornings. The kind of place where sound carries, and silence has weight. Also, this is the funny part, or the embarrassing part. Our sweet little school somehow ended up on those party school lists. Like, consistently. People love to pretend it was all rosaries and theology, but honestly, the place was marinated in alcohol. That was the vibe. Half holy ground, half hold my beer. Anyway, I didn't learn the ghost stories right away. Those came from a priest named Father Martin Keene. Warm guy, twinkly eyes, always seemed like he had a story loaded and ready. Every Halloween, he'd do this unofficial greatest hits of strange things that had happened on campus. Not dramatic like a campfire storyteller, more like he was remembering old neighbors. And there's one story he told that stuck with me in a way I still don't fully love. I lived in a dorm called Donovan Hall. Weird little stroke of luck. I had the only single room on my floor. Which sounds great until you realize a single room is also a lot of alone time in an old building, at night, with pipes that sigh and radiators that knock like they're trying to start a conversation. I saw some odd stuff in that room. Shadows that didn't feel like shadows, movement in the corner of my eye. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was not living like a monk. I had a phase where I thought I was experimenting, and I kept, let's call it a questionable amount of substances around. So anytime I saw anything weird, I automatically filed it under, yeah, okay, that's probably on you. So I really tried not to spook myself. But then Father Keene told us this. Back in the late 60s, someone on our wing had taken their own life. It happened over a break when the building was nearly empty, so the body wasn't discovered right away. And apparently, the person had left a radio playing. Father Keene said that sometimes, when the dorm is vacant, like over winter break, you can walk down that hallway and hear music. Not footsteps, not whispers, just late 60s radio hits, faint and tinny, as if a door is closed somewhere and you're hearing it leak through the cracks. Here's the part that made everybody go still. They never told us which room. So if you lived on that wing, you spent the rest of your time there doing this quiet math in your head, counting doors, remembering who lived where, wondering if you were sleeping 10 feet from the story. Now, that's one category of strange. There were others, lighter in a way. One of the most famous, friendly presences was this woman people claimed to see wandering the grounds. An old-fashioned dress, a bonnet you couldn't miss. The kind of outfit that doesn't belong in the 1990s unless you're in a reenactment, like it was normal, like you were greeting an old friend. Then there was the scary room story, Father Keene's personal favorite, or maybe the one he hated the most, was room 248 in Bruton Hall. That had been his room when he was a seminarian, years earlier. He described all the classic stuff. Objects moved when no one was there, books sliding off shelves. The feeling of walking into your own room and realizing the air had changed. He said he tried to ignore it, tried to outpray it, out-stubborn it, out-rationalize it. But the night that finally cracked him was this. He woke up to the slow creak of his bathroom door opening. Not a bang, not a swing, a careful, deliberate opening, like somebody was trying not to wake him. And then, the bathroom light flickered on. And then, this part always gave me chills. Everything in the room shut off at once. Light, sound, the hum of electricity. like the whole place had exhaled and gone dead. He moved out after that. Eventually, the building became regular dorm rooms, but he said students kept finding him for years afterward, because whatever was happening in that room didn't stop when he left. And then, then there was the one he called the nun's room. He wouldn't even give a room number. He just said it was so bad, it got sealed, like physically closed off. And when I was there, he claimed it was still sealed, still shut, still avoided. Like the school had agreed, quietly, that some doors didn't need to be opened again. He told that one slower than all the others, less joking, like he didn't want to give it too much oxygen. There were smaller stories too, the kind that spread around campus and get retold with that half-laugh people use when they're pretending they're not nervous. There was Mother Imogen, this spirit some students swore would tidy up after you. Like if your room was a disaster, you'd come back and find things oddly arranged. Not perfectly clean, just corrected. Like someone disapproved of your mess and couldn't help themselves. People said she wore an old-style habit, and that you'd hear a soft knock at doors, as if she was making rounds. There was the Confederate soldier, a quiet figure seen at the edge of campus, walking like he had somewhere to be and didn't care who was watching. No dramatic chains or moaning, just this steady, lonely pacing through the dark. And then there was my favorite story, not because it's scary, but because it's almost sweet until you think about it too hard. They said once a year or so, a student would hit a breaking point. A new student usually, homesick, alienated, maybe convinced they didn't belong there. The kind of person you can spot because they're trying to disappear. And a priest, kindly, older, with a beard, would somehow appear. Like right when the student was ready to quit. He'd sit with them, listen, say exactly what they needed to hear, and send them back with this steady, calm confidence. The student would wake up the next day with a completely different outlook, like something in them had reset. And then, eventually, they described the priest to someone who'd been around longer. And the older student would say, very gently, "Oh, you met Father Andrew." And when the new kid asked who that was, the answer would come, "He died years ago." So the joke was, "Congratulations, you just got life-changing encouragement from a ghost." And honestly, if there's a haunting you're going to have, that's not the worst one. Anyway, those are the ones I remember. And I'll be the first to admit, time messes with details. Stories get polished, edges get rounded, pieces get lost. Just smile a little and say hello. So, I need to tell you this like I'd tell a friend sitting across from me, because that's the only way it comes out right. When I was little, my family swore I had this weird, paranormal streak. Like talking to people who weren't there, or reacting to things that made adults go quiet and exchange looks. There was even a story I grew up hearing. Apparently, when I was a baby, something unseen knocked a couple toys clean out of the crib like they'd been thrown. No one made some big dramatic deal out of it, though. It was more like, that's odd. And life moved on. I moved on too. Mostly. But there's this feeling I get sometimes, and it's hard to explain without sounding like I'm trying to make myself into some kind of movie character. It's not like hearing voices or seeing shadows in corners. It's just a pull. Deep inside my chest, like something invisible hooks itself around my ribs and tugs. Like my body knows something before my brain catches up. The first time I remember it clearly, I was 8. My grandpa, let's call him Ray, had cancer. Everyone knew it was bad, but it wasn't one of those, this is the day situations. We were visiting, doing the whole family rotation, one by one, saying our goodbyes just in case. But no one was acting like we were minutes away from anything. When it was my turn, I went into his room alone. He looked tired in that way that makes you feel small, like you're watching someone fade in real time. I sat there, and at first it was normal. Quiet, awkward, kid brain trying to figure out what you're supposed to say when you're 8 and your grandpa is sick. And then, that pull hit me. It was sudden. Not pain, not fear, just this heavy, sick certainty. Like the air in the room shifted and my body went, something's coming. Something's coming right now. I didn't understand it, not really. I just felt yanked inward, like my chest had a string tied to it and someone was tugging the other end. I left the room a minute or two later, because what else do you do? I went back out to where everyone was, trying to act normal, but my stomach felt wrong. Less than 5 minutes later, everything changed. Someone rushed in. Voices got sharp. People stood up too fast. And I found out he'd suddenly woken up, said something about his mom, like he was seeing her, like he was going to her. And then he was just gone. It was unexpected. It was fast. And that pull in my chest stayed with me, like my body was trying to say, see, this is what I mean. The second time was years later. I don't remember my exact age, but I was somewhere in that early teen zone, old enough to be stubborn, young enough to think I was invincible. My dad, Darren, has diabetes. He'd had rough days before, but nothing that ever felt like an emergency in my brain. That night I was up late, doing what teenagers do. Not sleeping, sneaking snacks, messing with the TV volume so no one woke up. I'd stolen the remote and was watching something I probably wasn't supposed to. And then, that feeling came back. Same pull, same sudden heaviness. Like my chest tightened and my whole body went alert before I even knew why. And right after that, this loud thud. I froze. You know that moment where everything inside you goes silent and you're listening with your whole body? That was me. I ran out and found him. He'd crashed, blood sugar so low it was terrifying. He was barely responsive. It wasn't dramatic the way movies do it. It was worse because it was real, quiet and wrong and urgent. The adults later told me I basically saved his life. That if I hadn't found him when I did, if it had been even a few more minutes, he might not have made it, like my body knew. The third time was when I was 16, barely 16, still half kid, half ready to fight the world. My childhood pet, Pippin, had been sick for a while. Not, he's going to die tonight sick. More like, we should keep an eye on him sick. The kind where everyone's worried but also trying to stay hopeful. That night didn't seem like the night. Nothing dramatic happened, no big warning. And then, there it was again, the pull. And with it, this frantic energy that felt like my brain caught fire. I started begging my parents, like full-on pleading. I remember hearing my own voice sounding way too intense, like I jumped onto some invisible train and couldn't get off. I said something like, I can feel it. We have to take him in. If we don't, he's going to die soon. I even tried to grab him and leave, like I could just outrun whatever was coming. My parents stopped me, thank God, because I was not in a normal headspace. And later that night, early morning really, he passed. After that, I stopped trying to treat this like a coincidence. 3 times is a pattern. At least it feels like one. Which brings me to the reason I'm even telling you any of this. I'm 17 now, and I met someone recently, long distance, the kind of connection that sneaks up on you, and then suddenly you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is real. I actually care about this person in a way that scares me. Let's call him Eli. We traded numbers for emergencies, like if our main app went down or something serious happened, we'd still have a way to reach each other. Normal couple-ish planning, nothing spooky. Except when his contact popped up, it showed his full name. and I didn't know his last name yet. It wasn't like a huge secret or anything, we just hadn't gotten to that point. But seeing it all spelled out like that made my stomach drop, because the moment I read it, that pull happened again. Not panic exactly, more like a signal, like my chest tightened and something inside me went, "Pay attention." And the thought that hit me was so strange I almost didn't want to admit it to myself, that I was supposed to have that information, like I was supposed to be able to reach him, like I was meant to keep him here. Because here's the other context. Eli struggles mentally. He has dark days. And since meeting him, there have been a few moments where I've talked him down, where I've stayed up and messaged him through the worst of it, where I've said the right thing at the right time without knowing how I found it. And maybe that's just what people do when they care. Maybe I'm not sensing anything supernatural at all. Maybe I'm just observant. Maybe I'm just scared of losing people, so my brain searches for patterns like it's trying to build safety out of randomness. But I can't shake the timing. I can't shake how the feeling always shows up like a knock on the inside of my ribs, like something leaning close and whispering, "Not yet. Go. Now." And I hate how heavy it feels, because if I'm wrong, then I'm just being dramatic. But if I'm right, then it's like I'm walking around with this invisible alarm inside me, and it only goes off when something precious is about to slip away. And now there's someone precious who's far away. So yeah, that's what's been sitting in my chest lately. Not a ghost story, just a pull. Hey, before I start, I just want to give you a heads up. This story touches on mental health and suicidal thoughts. So, good evening. At least, it's evening as I'm sitting here writing this, but I'm going to tell it like I'm talking to you across a kitchen table. My name is Maya, and I'm 42 now. And for as long as I can remember, I've had this thing. Dreams that don't feel like dreams. Moments when I know something before it happens. Sometimes I hear things too, voices or impressions. Line a radio station nobody else can tune into. On my mom's side of the family, they didn't call it intuition. They didn't call it sensitivity. They called it evil. They said it was the devil trying to get a hold of me. And when I was a teenager, they ended up having me committed because they thought I was having psychotic episodes. But for me, it didn't start as something dark. It started when I was little, like 5. I remember telling my mom so matter-of-factly, an angel took me to heaven, and I got to choose which brother I'd be raised with. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language, and I told her exactly what I'd seen. A bright light, this calm feeling, and 3 babies. 3. And somehow I just knew they were my brothers, but I'd only grow up with one of them. My mom didn't say much that night. A week later, she found out she was pregnant. Now, my parents had been divorced since I was 2. So later in life, it made this strange kind of sense. My mom ended up having 1 son, and my biological dad went on to have 2 more. 3 brothers. That was the first time I realized the things in my head didn't always stay in my head. And it just kept happening. When I was 15, I started having nightmares about my grandmother's sister. Let's call her Marla. In the dreams, she was driving to visit for the holidays, and there was this horrible crash I couldn't shake. I told my mom and my grandma, and they got angry. Told me not to say things like that. Told me I was letting demons speak through me. Then one morning my grandma said, real casual, "Marla left early. She should be here by dinner." A few hours later, I'm sitting there playing a little handheld game, half in my own world, when I look up, and I swear to you, I saw her. Not like a memory, not like imagination, like she was there, standing in the doorway, watching me. She didn't speak. She just walked past me toward my sister's room, then turned back and smiled. This small, gentle smile. And then she was gone. I ran to my mom, shaking, and I said, "Mom, she's dead." And I got punished for it. Hard. Not long after that, the phone rang, and it was real, and it was exactly what I'd said. That was the moment something inside me broke. I felt like if I kept knowing things, people would keep dying, and it would somehow be my fault. I didn't want to be me anymore. I tried to hurt myself. I woke up the next day, alive, confused, and honestly embarrassed, and my mom decided that was it. I needed help. And that's how I ended up in a mental health facility, being told I was sick, being medicated, being watched, like I was dangerous. And maybe I was dangerous, to myself at least. There's another moment I think about a lot. I was on a day pass once, visiting my grandparents. My aunt, let's call her Kendra, was crying because a doctor told her she couldn't have kids. And I had this dream, so clear it felt like someone had handed me a photograph. Kendra, holding 2 little boys. So I told her, I said, "You're going to have kids. 2 boys." A few months later, Kendra found out she was pregnant. And later, she had 1 boy. Then she had another, 2 sons. After that, I learned to keep my mouth shut. Because even when I was right, it didn't make things easier. It just made people afraid of me. Years went by. I learned to nod along, to smile, to act normal, to swallow the weirdness like a bitter pill. But sometimes, it slipped out anyway. My sister had gone through 2 miscarriages, and one night we were sitting together, back when we were younger and dumber, smoking weed and trying to laugh through the pain. She told me she and her husband were going to try again, and I blurted out, "You don't need to try. You're already pregnant, with twins." She stared at me like I'd cursed her. Not long after, she started bleeding and rushed to the doctor. I was home watching her kids, sick with worry. When she came back, she didn't even say hello. She slapped the paperwork down in front of me and said, "They're fine." She was pregnant, twins, and she looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or shove me away. Then there was my therapist. Last year, I finally got brave enough to be honest with someone whose job was literally to listen. I'll call him Dr. Adrian. One session, the noise in my head got so loud I couldn't track what he was saying. I kept looking away, blinking, trying to ground myself. He noticed and asked, "What's going on? You seem distracted." And I said, quietly, "The voices are yelling." He didn't flinch, just asked, calm as anything, "What are they saying?" And I told him. I said, "They're all talking at once, but the clearest thing is, you're going to be in a wreck. It'll happen before our next session. It'll be on a curve or turning somewhere, and you'll get hit by a silver vehicle." 2 weeks later, the day before our next appointment, he texted me a photo, him in the back of an ambulance, and all it said was something like, "You were right." He'd been hit while turning out of a parking lot by a silver car. Our session was supposed to be the next day. After that, I went back to silence again, back to biting my tongue, because I don't want to be right. I want to be wrong. I want to be ordinary. But recently, I opened up to my mom again, just a little, because my sister was pregnant, and this time everyone was excited. They were expecting a baby girl. My mom asked what was bothering me, and I told her I'd had a dream about the birth. I didn't want to say it. I felt stupid, like I was inviting trouble by naming it out loud. But I said it anyway. I told her, "There will be complications. The baby will struggle to breathe at first. She'll start coming in the 1 o'clock hour. She'll have a head full of hair. and she'll be about 19 inches long. When the day came, my sister started pushing at 112. Baby's head crowned, and then everything shifted. Nurses got serious. The monitors changed. They told my sister to stop pushing. The cord was wrapped around the baby's neck, more than once. My niece was born with a full head of hair, and she was almost exactly the length I'd said. She stayed in the hospital a few extra days. And my family? They didn't say, "Thank God you warned us," or "Thank you for caring." They said, "Your demons are at it again." So that's the backdrop. That's my life. This strange tightrope between wanting to be understood and wanting to disappear. And then, after I finally talked about all of this more openly, after I admitted out loud that these things happened to me, something new started. And I've always had this thing where I wake up between 2 and 4 a.m., like clockwork. One night, right after I'd shared more than I usually do, I woke up to a sound outside. It reminded me of something I used to hear in a tiny rural town I lived in once, population under 1,000. It was like a coyote, but off. Like the pitch was wrong. Like it didn't belong. I told myself not to spiral. I got up, went about my day. But when I left for work, there was a dog outside, and something else that looked almost like a dog, but not quite. The shape was wrong. The posture was wrong. Like a coyote wearing a dog's skin. When I came home, both animals were still there in the parking lot. I live in a small apartment complex, only a handful of units, mostly adults. Quiet place. I started laundry, made dinner, and the sound came back. So I stepped outside, and those animals were staring straight at my apartment. I took a few steps toward them, and they ran toward the ditch, but then they stopped and looked back at me, like they wanted me to follow. I didn't. I asked a neighbor if they'd seen them. The neighbor blinked and said, "See what animals?" And in that moment, my stomach dropped, because I knew what it felt like to be the only one seeing something. I knew what it meant in my family. I knew what people would say if I pushed it. So I went inside and asked my husband if he'd heard the noise. He said no. But my cat, his name is Jasper, he reacted. Jasper's usually affectionate, sleeps by my pillow, follows me around like a little shadow. But that night he stood guard by the front door for hours, just sitting there, rigid, staring, ears twitching, like something was on the other side and he was daring it to try. When I finally went to bed, he didn't curl up by my head like usual. He sat at the foot of the bed, upright, facing the door, all night, like a sentry. And I'll tell you something about Jasper. He was a stray my aunt fed for 2 years up in the hills. I brought him home to the city, turned him into a house cat, and it took time, but we bonded in a way I can't explain. He feels like a little guardian I didn't ask for but desperately needed. It's 3:42 a.m. as I'm telling you this part, and he finally relaxed. He came up and curled beside my head like he normally does, like he's saying, "Okay, you can breathe now." So that's where I'm at. A lifetime of being told I'm cursed. A lifetime of seeing things I can't prove. Knowing things I don't want to know. I don't know if it's trauma. I don't know if it's genetics. I don't know if it's mental illness mixed with coincidence, mixed with pattern recognition. I've heard family stories on my dad's side about people being called witches. I've heard stories on my mom's side about indigenous ancestry and second sight. I don't even know what I believe. What I know is this: I'm tired of being afraid of myself. And I'm tired of being treated like a walking omen. So I keep asking the question I've asked in my quietest moments, and I'm asking it now, straight to you. Am I cursed? So, I guess I should start by telling you this up front. I've been around haunted places basically my entire life. Not like a fun, spooky season kind of haunted. I mean the kind where you grow up learning the difference between a normal creak in the house and the other kind. The one that makes your stomach drop for no logical reason. My family's always been deeply spiritual, the serious kind of spiritual, and for whatever reason that seems to draw things in. Like we're a porch light and they're moths. We actually learned, years back, how to keep most of it at a distance. Nothing dramatic, just specific rituals, a few protective practices, the kind of stuff you don't talk about at parties because it makes everyone go quiet. But anyway, 2 weeks ago, my friend Marina invited me over to see her new apartment. She was sharing it with 3 other women, and she was excited in that bright, proud way people get when they've finally upgraded their space. I didn't want to show up empty-handed, so I grabbed a nice bottle of gin, something with a pretty label, the kind you feel classy setting on a counter. Her building was gorgeous, tall, old, elegant. It had that European vibe, more like Paris than anything else, right in the middle of a neighborhood that wasn't exactly falling apart, but you could feel it slipping. Like the paint was still on the walls, but hope was starting to peel at the edges. The lobby was even prettier than the outside. High ceilings, polished stone, that quiet echo every fancy building has. Marina met me at the entrance, and we got into the elevator together. And listen, this part matters, okay? Because people always assume the feeling shows up right away. We hit the wrong floor by accident. Totally normal mistake. We stepped out, wandered around a hallway for a minute, laughed about it, then got back into the elevator and went to the correct floor. That entire time, I felt fine. Completely fine. I was actually admiring the hallways, the lighting, the old trim, the way the carpet muffled footsteps. Nothing about it screamed bad. But the second the elevator doors opened on her floor, it was like walking into a wave. Not a chill. Not that movie cliche where everything drops 10 degrees. It was heavier than that. The air felt dark, like it had been holding its breath for years. And if you've ever lived somewhere haunted, really haunted, you know what I mean. There's this instant recognition your body does before your mind catches up. Like your nervous system is quietly going, "Oh, this again." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to freak her out on the first night in her new place. But when she unlocked her door and we stepped inside, it got worse. The feeling wasn't just in the apartment. It was at the entrance, like something was stationed there, lingering. What made it even stranger was the apartment directly across the hall. Their door had religious writing on it, protective phrases, the kind people put up to keep negative energy away. And I remember staring at it thinking, that should be working. That kind of thing usually creates a boundary. Not perfect, but enough to discourage whatever's roaming around. But for some reason, it wasn't doing anything. And that's where my mind started going places I didn't want it to go. Because years ago, I lived in this high-rise where a man had taken his own life in the building. After that, the atmosphere changed. The kind of presence that moved through that place wasn't angry. It was suffering. Constant, sharp suffering. Like grief with nowhere to land. But here's the awful truth. Most of the time, you can't help. Not without paying for it. It takes something out of you. And unless you're willing to drain yourself completely, you can't just carry them to peace like some kind of holy ambulance. So they linger. And when they linger, they affect everything around them. Sleep, mood, health, the way a room feels. Standing in Marina's entryway, that old memory snapped right into my chest. The presence felt similar. That same, dense, drowning sadness. I remember tensing up instantly, bracing for the kind of torment I'd dealt with for years. Nightmares, waking up exhausted, feeling watched when no one was there. I honestly thought, I need to leave, right now. But it didn't touch me, and that surprised me. Because usually, when something recognizes you, when it realizes you can sense it, that's when it gets bold. Later, I remembered I'd been wearing a protection charm that day. Nothing flashy, just something small, something personal. And I'd been consistent with my prayers lately too, more than usual. Maybe that mattered. Maybe it created a kind of shield. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I have perfect answers. Anyway, we tried to have a normal night. We poured drinks, we sat around talking, laughing, catching up. And I kept noticing little things. For one, her room was so dark. And I don't mean cozy dim. I mean weirdly dark. The windows faced west, so there should have been warm light, especially in the late afternoon. But it felt like the light didn't fully settle in the room, like it hit the walls and gave up. And when night came, it was pitch black in there, in a way that felt unnatural, like the darkness was thicker than it should have been. As the djinn disappeared and the conversation got softer, Marina started sharing things that had been happening. One roommate woke up with her toes bleeding. No pain, no injury, just blood. Another kept waking up at the same exact time on certain nights, like an alarm clock no one set. They'd hear random noises, soft taps, faint movement, the occasional thud that didn't match anything in the apartment. And I sat there listening, nodding, trying to keep my face calm, but inside I was thinking, yeah, that tracks. I told her, gently, really gently, that if she had the option, she should consider moving. Not because I thought the presence was evil. I didn't get malice from it. What I felt was depression, a kind of crushing sorrow so heavy it spilled into the living space and started bruising everyone who lived there. Like being around someone who's crying quietly in the next room all the time, except you can't reach them, and you can't make it stop. It reminded me of those stories you hear about crying spirits, like the Japanese tales where a ghost isn't there to threaten you, just to mourn. The kind of haunting that doesn't slam doors so much as it drains the color out of your life. That's what it felt like. And honestly, that kind can be the hardest. Because what do you even do with grief that isn't alive anymore, but still won't leave? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you this the same way I'd tell a friend over coffee, because I still don't totally know what to do with it. My husband Evan and I bought our house about 8 years ago. It's one of those one-level brick ranch homes, built in the early 1950s, but it had been fully renovated a few months before we moved in. Fresh everything. New paint, new floors, the whole perfect flip vibe. But here's the thing. Even back then, something felt just a little off. Not scary off, just intriguing. Before we put in an offer, I kept asking our agent, do they have any photos of what it looked like before the rehab? Like, I needed to know. You know how some flips are basically a disaster with lipstick on it, covering up water damage or mold or, I don't know, a full-on hoarder situation. Our agent said she asked the listing agent and that there were no before pictures at all. Which, maybe that's normal, but it stuck in my head. Still, the location was great, the yard was huge, and we genuinely loved the house. So we went for it and closed fast, about a month later. Move-in day comes. We're hauling boxes in from this rental truck we could only afford for a couple hours. Back then, we were living on a tight budget, Evan was active duty, and we were doing everything ourselves. While we're sweating and dragging furniture, I notice an older couple sitting right in our driveway like they're waiting. The woman, Luce, was in a wheelchair. Her husband, Mark, sat beside her in a folding chair. Sweet-looking, quiet, mid-70s maybe. We waved and called out that we'd come introduce ourselves once we returned the truck. But when we got back, they were gone. That night, our very first night in the house, we finally crawled into bed exhausted. And about 20 minutes in, we both hear this deep, booming sound. Not like music exactly, more like thump, 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 thump. Almost like drums. And my first reaction, honestly, I was irritated. I remember whispering, "Of course, we finally buy a home and the neighbors blast sound all night." So I got up, crept toward the kitchen, because that's where it sounded like it was coming from, and the second I stepped out there, it stopped. Dead silent. I stood there for a second, annoyed, then went back to bed. Maybe 5 minutes later, thump, 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 thump. Again. This time Evan was already half asleep, but I got up again. Now it sounded like it was coming from the garage. The door to the garage is off the kitchen, so I opened it, peered into the dark, and it stopped instantly. Again. This happened a couple more times. The last time, I shook Evan awake because it started to mess with my nerves. Like, it wasn't just noise anymore. It was the way it stopped the moment I went toward it, every single time. Eventually, we fell asleep, but I'll be honest, my body didn't fully relax all night. The next day, we're still unpacking, and I see the couple outside. So I walk over and introduce myself properly. Luce is warm and chatty, and Mark is friendly, but quieter. She tells me she grew up in the Philippines, and he's originally from Idaho. One of those met young and stayed together forever love stories. Apparently, they'd been together since they were teenagers, because Mark had met her while he was stationed overseas years ago. We're talking, and I finally ask about the house, and this is where my stomach kind of drops. Luz tells me the previous owner, an older man named Gordon, had died suddenly of a heart attack at a medical office nearby. Like, 1 minute he was fine, and the next, gone. His daughter, Tessa, inherited the house, but she couldn't keep up with the property taxes. She'd only lived here a little under 2 years before selling. And Luce goes, "Oh no, never. But I've been in the garage." I'm like, "Why the garage?" And she says, so casually, like she's telling me what she had for lunch. Because Gordon was a drummer. Jazz drummer. He played in a band and he'd practice in there all the time. Most nights until maybe 9. Sometimes later on weekends. And I just stood there like, are you kidding me? Because that booming we heard the first night, it sounded exactly like drums. And it had sounded like it was coming from the garage. After that, though, nothing happened. Not really. The house just became our house. Life got busy. You settle in, you stop. Welcome to Paranormal M. Feels good to do what you love, right? For me, that's grabbing the mic, sitting down, and sharing creepy, mysterious stories with you. Thank you so much to everyone who's already sent in their own paranormal experiences. Keep them coming, don't be shy. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Now, switch on your nightlight, and let's dive into today's mysteries. So, this happened when I was 15, and it's one of those memories that never really lets go, you know? Growing up, I had a few little weird moments here and there, nothing dramatic. I'd catch a shadow slipping past in the corner of my eye, or feel something lightly brush the back of my shoulder when no one was behind me. I always wrote it off as an overactive imagination, stress, maybe just my brain being weird. I never really believed in anything paranormal. Around that time, my parents divorced. My dad moved into this small apartment complex across town, and my mom moved into a townhouse with her new boyfriend and his 2 kids. We all got along okay at first, but as we got older, everyone kind of retreated into their own corners of life. Different schools, different hobbies, different rooms with doors closed. Before I get to the main part, there's some important background. My mom was in the army before I was born. She made it through her service without any serious injuries, thankfully, but it left a huge mark on who she is. Even after leaving, she stayed really involved, donating to veterans organizations, going to events, volunteering at fundraisers. It was more than just respect. It felt like a promise she was keeping. Part of that came from her dad, my grandfather, Raymond. I never met him. He enlisted when he was young, and he died during a deployment. I don't know a lot of details about how it happened. My mom doesn't talk about it much. I just grew up knowing that he was this quiet, missing piece in our family. Fast forward a few years after the divorce. I'm a freshman in high school, and I'm not doing great mentally. The schoolwork felt like this constant pile I could never dig out of. At home, there were a lot of arguments, small things that escalated quickly, sharp words that lingered long after people left the room. I was always tense, always tired. One Friday night, I decided I was just going to tune everything out. I stayed up late in my room watching movies on my laptop, eating chips and candy, just trying to forget how overwhelmed I felt. By the time I finally paused the movie, it was around 1:40 in the morning. The house was quiet. Everyone else was asleep. I realized I was really thirsty, so I headed to the kitchen. I didn't bother turning on the lights. By then, I knew the layout of the house by heart, the distance from my doorway to the kitchen tiles, where the edge of the counter was, where the fridge handle was. The only light was this faint bluish glow from the microwave clock. I grabbed this old blue plastic cup from the counter and started filling it with water from the fridge dispenser. And while I'm standing there, half zoned out, I hear it. A faint screech. It came from the darkness to my left, where the hallway opened up toward the living room. At first, it sounded almost like furniture scraping against the floor, the kind of sound you get when you drag a heavy chair without lifting it. But there was something off about it. It was too sharp, too thin. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I froze. My first thought was, okay, it's nothing. Calm down. We had 2 cats at the time, and they were always squeezing into places they shouldn't, knocking things over, scratching at stuff. I told myself it was just one of them jumping off the couch or pushing something around on the floor. But the longer I stood there, the colder I felt. My cup wasn't even full yet, and I just thought, you know what? I'm done. I pulled the cup away, not even bothering to stop the drip, and started walking back toward my room. I'd only taken a few steps when I heard it, a raspy, human cough. It came from behind me, from the direction of the living room. I turned around without thinking, and that's when I saw him. There, standing in the shadowy outline of the living room, was a man. He had a short, prickly beard, tired eyes, and his mouth hung just slightly open, like he was about to say something but didn't. He didn't look transparent. There was no glowing aura, no horror movie stuff. He looked solid, real. Like if I walked up to him and pushed him, I'd actually feel him. For a few seconds, my brain was just trying to process stranger, intruder, danger. But then something clicked. I knew that face. It was my uncle, my mom's younger brother, Daniel. He'd died in a car accident the previous winter. The realization hit me like ice water. I remember this rush of chills crawling over my entire body, like my skin suddenly didn't fit right. I didn't scream. I didn't say anything. I just stared, and he stared back, and I couldn't tell if he looked sad or tired or something else. The next part is fuzzy. It's like my brain didn't want to remember it clearly. I remember backing away. I remember turning and walking as fast as I could down the hallway, my legs feeling heavy and light at the same time. I shut my bedroom door and locked it, even though I wasn't sure what a lock would do against whatever that was. I put my movie back on, but I wasn't really watching it. I just needed noise. I stayed up until the sun started to slide through the blinds. Every little creak in the house made me jump. I told almost no one about it. The few people I did tell, they tried to be kind, but you could hear the skepticism. They said things like, "You were exhausted," or "Shadows can play tricks on you," or "Grief does weird things to the mind." And honestly, I wanted to believe them. It was easier to think my brain misfired than to accept that I'd seen my dead uncle in the living room. Life went on. I finished high school. I moved into my 20s. The memory faded into the background. Still there, but covered up by new routines, new problems. Then, a few weeks ago, now that I'm in my early 20s, something happened that pulled it all back. My mom and I went out to this small family diner not too far from where she lives now. You know the kind. Laminated menus, coffee that smells strong but tastes okay, old songs humming softly from a speaker somewhere near the ceiling. It was just a casual lunch. We were talking about work, about my siblings, about nothing super deep. At some point, I noticed my mom looking past me, her attention fixed on something over my shoulder. I turned around and saw this older man walking slowly down the aisle between tables. He had a worn camouflage jacket on, and there was a small veteran patch on his chest. He looked tired in that way you sometimes see in people who've lived a lot of life. Creases around his eyes, slight limp in his step. As he walked by our table, my mom looked up and said, very softly but clearly, "Thank you for your service." He smiled at her, just a little, nodded, and kept walking. I turned back to my mom, and her eyes were full of tears. Like, not just misty, she was really struggling to hold them back. I asked, "Mom, what's wrong?" She took a shaky breath and said, "That was my father." Not, "He looked like my father." Not, "He reminded me of my father." She said, "That was my father." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to correct her, to gently remind her that her dad had died years before I was even born. But the look on her face stopped me. She wasn't confused. She wasn't joking. She was overwhelmed, like she'd just seen a ghost and a miracle at the same time. We didn't finish our food. We paid, left quietly, and drove home, so I can't prove anything. Maybe it was just a stranger with similar features. Maybe her grief welled up and latched onto a familiar shape. Or maybe it was something else. I don't know. I probably could have let it go as one of those strange, emotional coincidences if it weren't for what happened this morning. I was in the kitchen again, making breakfast. It was early, sun just starting to light up the curtains. I was standing at the stove, waiting for eggs to finish, scrolling on my phone, half awake. And then I heard it. That same faint, scraping screech. This time it wasn't coming from the living room. It was right behind me. It sounded like something being dragged slowly across the floor. That sharp, thin noise that hits a nerve you didn't know you had. My whole body tensed up instantly. I turned around fast, expecting, hoping to see a cat, a dropped utensil, literally anything I could explain. There was nothing. The kitchen was empty. The hallway was empty. No one else was awake yet. I just stood there, staring at the space behind me, feeling that same cold, hollow sensation I'd felt all those years ago with the blue plastic cup in my hand. I still don't know what any of this means. I don't know if it's stress or grief or some leftover piece of my mind replaying old fears, or if it's something we don't have words for yet. All I know is, when I heard that screech again, it felt like the past had reached out and brushed the back of my shoulder one more time. And I can't quite shake the feeling that, somehow, I'm not the only one in the room when it happens. Hey, first of all, I'm from India, and English isn't my first language, so just be a little patient with me, yeah? I really want to share this properly with you. I've had some weird experiences in my life, like the kind that stick in your mind so clearly it feels like they happened last week, even though years have passed. Tonight I just felt like, okay, I need to say this out loud to someone, and that someone happens to be you. You know, one of my earliest memories is from when I was a kid, maybe 9, something like that. It was early evening, around 6 p.m. I was at home, completely alone, just chilling in the living room and watching Shin-chan on TV. There was this really silly scene, and I started laughing at it, like genuine belly laugh kind of thing. And right after my laugh, I heard another laugh. It was this eerie, creepy laugh, just a little bit delayed after mine, like an echo, but wrong. And it came from right behind me. Not from the TV, not from outside, from behind me. The whole room suddenly felt colder. I remember my body just locking up for a second, and then my brain finally caught up like, nope, we're not doing this today. I bolted. I ran straight out of the house, didn't even bother turning off the TV. I can still feel that sensation, that someone was standing there, laughing with me, but not in a friendly way. And this wasn't just a one-time thing. All through my life, I've had this weird, recurring experience of people calling my name when nobody is actually there. Like, I'll be at home, or walking on an empty street at night, or turning around a corner, or even up on rooftops, and I'll hear my name, clear as day. You know how your own name sounds, right? There's no confusion. It's not like I might have misheard something. This is my name, in a familiar tone, like someone who knows me is calling. I'll turn around, expecting to see someone, and nothing. Just empty space. After a while, it stopped feeling like a simple hearing things moment, and more like something trying to get my attention. One of the experiences that really shook me happened in 2022, sometime around June, in the late afternoon, about 5 p.m. or so. I was on my bed, kind of half lying down, half sitting, scrolling on my phone like we all do. The light was still coming in through the window. It wasn't dark or anything. It was just a normal, lazy day. My bed was pushed up against the wall, and my feet were towards the foot of the bed. I remember I was so focused on my phone that everything else sort of faded into the background. Then I saw it. From the foot of the bed, this human hand slowly came up over the edge. Just the hand. No body. It bent at the wrist and started feeling around on the mattress, tapping lightly, as if it was searching for something. The way you pat around when you've lost your keys or your phone. I just stared. I didn't even scream. I froze. Then, as if it didn't find what it was looking for, the hand straightened back up, moved down, and disappeared over the edge again. That's when my body finally reacted. I jumped up and stood on top of the bed, like the floor was lava. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I checked the foot of the bed. Nothing. I checked the left side. Nothing. Then I jumped off the right side, closer to the door, and looked under the bed. No one. Nothing. No place where someone could be hiding. Just empty space and dust. A couple of my more recent experiences happened when I was staying in a PG, like a hostel, during college. One of them was on the rooftop, and the other was in a park nearby. Let me tell you the rooftop one first. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, so I went up to the rooftop to get some fresh air and talk to a friend. I was sending voice notes on Instagram, just walking back and forth, absent-mindedly pacing like we do when we're deep in conversation. If you've seen typical Indian houses, you know how the rooftops look. Water tanks, little boundary walls, narrow ledges near the stairs. I was walking near the area where the water tanks are, and that's when I noticed it. there was this humanoid shadow figure sitting on the edge of the small gateway structure that leads onto the roof. At first, I thought it was just some trick of the light, like maybe a cloth or something hanging. But it was shaped like a person, sitting, still. While I was looking straight at it, the figure stood up. No face, no features, just this solid, shadowy outline of a person. It stood up on the edge, paused for a second, and then it walked. Not along the ledge, not down the stairs. It walked off the edge of the rooftop, into the air, like the ground just continued out there, invisible to me. My whole body went cold. I didn't go closer, obviously. I just turned and ran down the stairs. I went straight to my room, shut the door, locked it, and crawled into my bed. I pulled the bedsheet over myself like that thin fabric was somehow going to protect me from anything. I was lying there, trying to convince myself it was nothing, that I was just tired or imagining things, when I started hearing it. Knocking. At first, it sounded like it was coming from somewhere above, like from the rooftop. A slow, deliberate knocking. Then it seemed to move. The sound shifted toward my room, toward my window. It felt like it was tracing a circle, roof, wall, window, back again. I put my earphones in, blasted music as loud as I could, and tried to drown it out. I didn't get up to look. I didn't want to see anything. Eventually, I somehow fell asleep, but that feeling of something searching for me stayed. Now, about the park. There was this park I used to visit regularly near my PG. I'd go there almost every night to walk for an hour or two, trying to lose weight and also clear my head. It became a sort of ritual for me. One night, it was around 11 p.m. I remember thinking, maybe I should skip today. I'm tired. But then I was like, no, consistency is important, and I forced myself to go. At first, everything was normal. Streetlights, a few distant sounds from the road, some stray dogs lazing around. I put on my earphones, turned up my music, and started walking laps around the track. After 3 or 4 rounds, I noticed something. I started smelling this foul odor. It was strong, like the smell of rotting flesh or a dead animal somewhere nearby. I assumed it was probably a dead dog or a rat in the bushes. You know how it is. These things happen, right? So I tried to ignore it and kept walking. But the smell didn't go away. It stuck to me. It followed me through the entire loop, like it was attached to the air around my body, not just one spot in the park. No matter where on the path I walked, the stench stayed with me. That's when my brain went from, this is gross, to, this is wrong. A few minutes later, I started hearing footsteps. The strangest part? I could hear those footsteps clearly, even though I had music blasting in my ears. The sound was just there, right behind me. Not too fast, not too slow. Matching my pace, as if someone, or something, was walking exactly 1 or 2 steps behind me, keeping rhythm with me. The mixture of the smell, the footsteps, and that feeling of being watched finally got to me. I just thought, yeah, okay, not today. I'm done. I turned around and headed straight out of the park. Didn't run, but I walked fast. I didn't look back again. I went straight home, locked my door, and sat there for a while, just trying to calm my breathing down. These are some of my horror experiences, the ones I feel ready to share right now. There are a few more that I've left out, partly because this is already a lot, and partly because I'm still not fully ready to talk about all of them. But you? You're actually one of the first people I've ever told all this to in this much detail. So, thank you for listening. I don't know what any of it means. I don't know if it's spirits, my mind playing tricks, or something in between. but if anything I said connects some dots for you or reminds you of something you've experienced, well, at least we're not alone in this. So, I never really know where to start with all of this. I'm 42 now, and for as long as I can remember, there's just been this extra layer to my life. Nothing big and cinematic, nothing that left me traumatized. Just these small, strange moments that don't quite fit anywhere. Lately, they've been looping in my head, and I keep wondering if there's something I'm supposed to understand that I've been missing. When I was about 6, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw my dad's mom standing in my bedroom. I was at my mom's house. My parents divorced when I was little, and there was absolutely no reason my grandmother would have been there. She was just standing by my dresser, quiet, not moving. And next to her was a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe in his 50s, kind of serious looking, but not scary. I remember just sitting up and thinking, well, that's weird. And then I got out of bed and went straight to wake up my mom. I told her, "Nana is in my room." She looked confused but followed me back down the hall. Of course, the room was empty. The next day, after school, my brother and I were supposed to walk to my dad's, but a family friend pulled up instead and told us to get in the car. My dad wasn't home, they said. My grandmother had passed away overnight. My dad had been with his brother making arrangements. After the funeral, we were at my grandmother's house going through old photos. Everyone was talking and pointing and telling stories. I was flipping through an album when I stopped at a picture. I recognized the man immediately. Same face, same expression as the man standing next to my grandmother in my room. I pointed and said, "Who's that?" My uncle, let's call him Dave, leaned over and said, "Oh, that's your grandpa, Leo. He died when your dad was in high school." I'd never seen a picture of him before that moment. Growing up after that, there were always little odd things in our house. Random creaks in the hallway when nobody was there. That soft murmur of voices you can't quite make out when you're home alone. Doors that absolutely refused to stay shut, even the one with that stubborn lock. None of it ever felt like a horror movie. It was more like just another quirk of the house, like the kitchen drawer that always stuck halfway. I don't remember being terrified, just vaguely aware that our home was a little busier than it looked. When I was about 9, my mom remarried. My stepdad, let's call him Ray, was actually the first adult to openly say, "Okay, something is off in this house." He told us that ever since he was a kid, he'd kind of seen things, felt things. Nothing dramatic, just aware. And we noticed something. When Ray was home, the house was quieter. Still not totally normal, but toned down. When he traveled for work, though, the weird stuff ramped up. More sounds, more doors, more that feeling of being watched that you're always trying to shrug off. Fast forward. I'm 23, and my then boyfriend, now husband, let's call him Matt, and I are moving into a new rental. It's in a really rough neighborhood, and honestly, the house itself was kind of a disaster. But the rent was cheap, and we were young and stubborn. We fixed it up way more than anyone should ever fix up a rental. We painted, put in new laminate floors, updated the bathroom. It wasn't fancy, but we made it ours. My parents weren't thrilled. Ray, especially, was very tense about it. I assumed it was just the neighborhood. You know, safety and all that. Pretty quickly after we moved in, though, something shifted between me and Matt. We started fighting. A lot. Over really small, petty things. We just felt prickly. At each other, at the world, at everything. We only ever fought like that inside the house. We'd be mid-argument, voices raised, feeling that awful tightness in our chests. and then one of us would need something from the car, or we'd decide to go grab food. The second we stepped outside, it was like someone turned a dial down. The energy between us just softened. The anger felt artificial, like it didn't belong to us. Back in the house, it cranked up again. We brought our oldest daughter home to that house. I'll call her Mia. She was born 6 weeks early and spent some time in the NICU. Those first weeks were such a blur. Fear, hope, exhaustion all tangled together. When she finally came home, she was just over 3 weeks old. One morning, after what felt like the longest night in history, I finally got her to sleep around 6:30 a.m. Matt's alarm went off around then too. I gently moved Mia into the bassinet next to our bed and sort of collapsed onto the mattress, facing away from the bedroom door. I felt the bed dip behind me, like when someone sits down carefully. Then I felt a hand, warm and gentle, start rubbing slow circles on my back. I relaxed instantly. I didn't even question it. Of course it was Matt. And then I heard the shower turn on in the bathroom. I froze. I rolled over. No one was on the bed. No one was between me and the bathroom. The bedroom door was still mostly closed. A few months later, we moved to another state for Matt's job. The day we moved out of that house, Ray asked me if I'd walk through it one last time with him. Just the two of us, in the empty rooms. He stood in the living room and closed his eyes for a second, like he was listening to something far away. Then he said, "I felt this place the second I pulled into the driveway the first time." He told me he could never get a clear picture, but that there was something dark there, angry and heavy and possessive, that really didn't want him there. But there was also something else, a softer presence that stayed very close to me, almost protective. He said that one felt relieved we were leaving, and almost grateful. I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't, honestly. Jump ahead again. I'm 30, and one of Matt's childhood friends, let's call him Jordan, is fighting cancer. We get the call in the middle of the night that he's gone. We sit up in bed together, talking and crying, making plans to bring food to his family the next day, trying to wrap our heads around the fact that someone our age, someone we'd just seen at a barbecue months earlier, is simply gone. Eventually, Matt gets up to use the bathroom. I watch him walk into our ensuite. He closes the door most of the way. While he's in there, our bedroom door opens. The hallway light spills in, and a shadow, like the shape of a person but not solid, moves through the room. It crosses between the door and the bed, and then goes out. The bedroom door closes behind it. I heard the click of the latch. A moment later, the bathroom door opens, and Matt comes back out, completely unaware of anything. I just stared at him, thinking, okay, was that him saying goodbye? Was that something else? When I was 32, Ray got very sick. He'd been struggling for a while, but that year he started hospice care. My mom often stayed with us because our house was closer to the hospital. We had this unspoken routine of trading off nights. One evening, she said, "I feel like I need to be home tonight," even though there wasn't any particular reason to think it would be the night. At 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of Ray screaming my name. Not calling it, screaming it. I bolted upright so fast that it woke Matt. I was already reaching for my phone when it lit up and started to ring. It was my mom. Ray had just passed away. Every single night during that time, I dreamt of Ray. There was nothing particularly symbolic or dramatic about it. He was just there, sitting in a chair, standing in a doorway, walking beside me, quiet but present. The night they put my mom on the ventilator, he was different. In that dream, he was pacing, anxious, almost agitated. I woke up feeling like my chest was full of static. On December 13th, the hospital called. They told us one of her lungs had collapsed. The damage was too much. and she wasn't going to survive. My brother and I were lucky, in a way. So many people didn't get this chance. We were allowed to sit in the ICU hallway, just on the other side of the sliding glass door from her room, while they removed the ventilator. We knew it was only a matter of minutes. I sat in the plastic chair, watching the monitors, watching her chest, feeling my brother pacing behind me. I remember the scuffed floor, the harsh lighting, the faint beeping from nearby rooms. And then, all at once, there was this piercing ringing in my ears, so loud it felt like it was inside my bones. My vision went dark around the edges, like someone was dimming the world, and I had this overpowering sensation that everything had just shifted. Not just my world, the world. The hallway tilted, the spinning got worse, and I slipped out of my chair onto the floor. My brother was at my side when the doctor came out and told us she was gone. Nothing has felt quite the same since that moment. It's like life continued, but slightly out of alignment. Last summer, when I was 40, my oldest, Mia, was gone for a few months chasing her drum corps dreams. If you know, you know. It was the night before she was due to come home, and we were all buzzing around the house trying to get everything ready. We live just outside a small, rural town. We have neighbors, but not close enough to casually lean over a fence and chat or anything. We don't have trash pickup out there, so once a week we load up the bags and take them into town. That evening, Matt and our younger two, let's call them Emma and Jack, went to run the trash while I stayed behind to clean out Mia's car. It was still light out, but heading toward dusk. I grabbed the shop vac, opened the car doors, and for a moment I thought, maybe I should wait until they're back. I won't be able to hear anything with this vacuum running, and I'm all alone. But then I brushed it off. I told myself, it's fine, it's early, you're being dramatic, and started vacuuming the front passenger floorboard. I was bent over, focused on that one stubborn little corner of dirt, when I heard 3 loud knocks on the side of the car. Not faint, not maybe it was an animal. Loud, solid. I felt the vibration through the door. I turned my head so fast I nearly hit it on the door frame. Nothing. No one there. Nothing moving in the yard. No wind, no car passing by. No branch nearby that could have hit it. Everything went weirdly still. I could hear coyotes way off in the distance. That's totally normal for us. But up close? Nothing. Just this thick quiet. And then I heard it, clear as if someone was standing right next to me. Go inside. It wasn't a voice I recognized, but it wasn't in my head either. It felt external, calm, but firm. So I listened. As I walked toward the house, our motion lights clicked on. The thing is, they're set so they usually don't come on until it's properly dark. But they lit up then, early, following me up the path like they were leading the way. I went inside, shut the door, and just stood there. My heart was pounding, but there was also this feeling like I just avoided something I should never meet. I can't explain it better than that, but that moment, I think about it almost every week. There's something about it that lodged itself under my skin. And now, we're back to where I started. I keep replaying all these things. My grandparents in my room, the house that made us fight, shadows in doorways, Ray calling my name, dreams of him when Mom was dying, that shift in the hallway, the knocks on the car, the voice telling me to go inside. Any one of them, by itself, I can kind of rationalize away. Sleep, stress, grief, the brain being weird. I know all the logical explanations, but when I lay them all out next to each other, like beads on a string, I don't know. It feels like too much to just be coincidence, and yet I have no idea what else to call it. The person I wish I could talk to about all of this is Ray. We never really went back to the topic after we moved out of that one house. Life got busy, kids were born, jobs changed, years blurred together. But he would have understood. He wouldn't have laughed it off or told me I was being ridiculous. Sometimes I wonder if there's some message I've missed, or if it's less about a message and more about proof? Reassurance that the people we love don't just vanish. Or maybe it's something else entirely, and I'm just not connecting the dots. I don't have a neat ending here. I don't have answers. I just needed to let it all spill out, in one place, in order. To say, this is my life, braided with these little hauntings. And to ask, quietly, does any of this sound familiar to you? Okay, so let me just talk to you like we're sitting at my kitchen table, because I still don't totally know what to make of all this. It started really small. One afternoon in my apartment, my daughter, Mia, suddenly goes, "Mama, there's a ghost here." Just once. Super casual, like she was pointing out a chair. I laughed, my partner Leo laughed, and we just sort of brushed it off. Kids say weird stuff, right? But after that, these little things kept happening. Me and Leo would be in the apartment, sometimes literally less than 3 feet apart, and I'd hear him say my name. Clear as day. I'd answer, turn to him, and he'd be like, "I didn't say anything." Then it would happen to him too. He'd swear he heard me call him from right behind him when I hadn't opened my mouth. At first we joked we were just tired, hearing things. I've also seen my bedroom door slowly push open while I'm lying on my bed, facing it. You know that lazy kind of swing? Every time, I'd blame it on the breeze from the windows. Must be the wind, I'd tell myself, even though sometimes the air felt completely still. Then work slowed down, and I started being home alone more, which is when it really got under my skin. One day I was standing at the little bar counter in my kitchen, eating instant noodles straight from the bowl and staring at Mia's drawings on the fridge. These bright little scribbles everywhere. The apartment was quiet. No TV, no music, just me. And then I hear it. The microwave door pops open. You know that soft click and then that slow, heavy swing? It did that. All by itself. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even moved. I froze right there at the counter. I wouldn't look at it directly because I was genuinely scared that if I saw it open, it would make it real. I finally made myself glance over. The door was hanging open. I was completely home alone. The last time we'd used the microwave was like 2 days before, and honestly, we're kind of rough on it. We usually slam it shut. I grabbed my phone and took a photo from exactly where I was standing, like I needed proof that I wasn't making it up. Then I called Leo, then my family, basically freaking out, like, I didn't move. I swear I didn't move. I'm not someone who's into paranormal stuff. I don't read ghost stories for fun. This is not my thing. So I just felt unprepared. Like I'd missed some life class on what to do if your appliances open themselves. Then about a week later, I'm on the couch, just scrolling and relaxing, when I hear this loud thud from my little bookshelf. It sounded like a book falling, solid, heavy. I wasn't anywhere near it, so I just sat there for a bit, pretending I didn't hear anything. You know that, if I ignore it, it didn't happen, kind of logic? Eventually, I got up to look. One of my books wasn't on the floor in front of the shelf like you'd expect. It was tucked under the bottom shelf, like pushed in. The way the sound came from, it should have just dropped straight down and out. And we have these heavy iron bookends, and the books are wedged in there pretty tight. So how did it get out, fall, and end up all the way under? That one really bothered me. Same couch, different day. I had this little clear bag with the screws from my wrist surgery sitting in front of me. My doctor let me keep them from the first surgery, kind of like a weird souvenir. I'd been cleaning earlier and left the bag near the end of the couch, but not right on the edge. Then I sat down with my laptop and forgot about them. They'd been sitting there for a while. Suddenly I hear this soft rolling sound. Inside the sealed bag, one of the metal screws was rolling from one end of the bag to the other, slowly, back and forth. The bag barely had any air in it. I hadn't moved. I'd been sitting still for a long time with that bag just lying there. No open windows either. There were people gardening outside, so everything was shut. That messed with me. There's something about something inside a closed bag moving on its own that feels very wrong. Then, just recently, I decided to rest because I've been sick. I remember getting up and actually slamming my bedroom door shut because I just wanted darkness and quiet. I got back into bed, put on TikTok, and I'm just half watching video after video. In the middle of a video, I hear a door handle, like the metal turning and a door opening. I thought it was just the audio in the video, so I paused it. The sound had stopped. And when I looked over, my door, the one I know I slammed shut, was now cracked open. Just slightly, like someone had carefully opened it and then stopped. And here's the thing, I don't have a long list of dead relatives or anything. There are 2 estranged grandparents I barely knew, and my abuelo, and that's pretty much it. But I do have a cadaver bone in my wrist from surgery, which occasionally pops into my mind when this stuff happens, like, what exactly am I carrying around with me now? My dad, Luis, thinks I just need cats in the house. He swears cats chase away whatever this is. We grew up with cats, always at least one, so maybe that's why nothing like this ever happened before. But now I'm allergic. My chest tightens up and my eyes puff, so that's not an easy option anymore. At this point, I'm honestly over it. It started out scary, and now it's just making me mad. It feels like I can't relax in my own home. I just want to be left alone. So, let me tell you about this thing that happened to me a few years back. At the time, I was in my early 30s, living in this little prefab house on about 3 acres of land. On the same property, there was this old farmhouse, original to the land, built sometime in the early 1900s. We didn't live in it. It was too run down, so we just used it for storage. But honestly, that place gave me the creeps. I would never go in there alone, and definitely not at night. It had that heavy, watching kind of feeling, you know? One night, I'm asleep, and I have this really vivid dream. In the dream, I wake up, and there, standing on my side of the bed, is a young couple. They looked like they'd stepped straight out of the late 1940s or early 1950s. The woman had on this simple, floral day dress, her hair curled and pinned in that vintage style. The man was wearing what looked like an old military flight jacket, like something a pilot would have worn. They weren't threatening or anything, but they were sad. Just this deep, aching sadness. They were talking to me, both of them, kind of urgently, like they really needed me to understand something. But in that weird, dreamlike way, I couldn't quite make out the words. The only clear sense I got was, find it. That was it. Find something. I woke up with that heavy, sad feeling stuck to me. For a minute, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling like, okay, that was intense. But eventually, I did what we usually do with weird dreams. I shrugged it off. The next day, my husband, Evan, asked me to help him with something out in the old house. He was fixing some wiring and moving boxes around up in the attic space. I didn't really want to go in there, but I went anyway. He climbed up first, poking around with a flashlight, while I stood at the bottom of the pull-down ladder, trying not to think about all the horror movies I've ever seen. After a minute or two, he called down, "Hey Maya, you should see this." So I climbed up into the attic with him. It was dusty and cramped, full of old trunks and boxes piled everywhere. He reached into one of them and handed me this worn, leather-bound photo album. It looked old. The leather was cracked, the pages kind of yellowed and delicate. I sat down on one of the beams and started flipping through it, and my heart just dropped. There they were, a young couple standing together, wearing the same kind of clothes as the people in my dream. She had on that sort of floral dress. He had the same style of bomber jacket. The way they were standing, the way they looked at the camera, it was them. I just froze for a second. My eyes started to sting, and my whole body did that cold, prickly thing. There were more pictures too, not just of them when they were young, but later. Wedding photos, photos with kids, family gatherings in front of that same old farmhouse. You could see them aging slowly, but always together. And I just kept thinking, this is their life. This is their whole life in my hands. Along with being really creeped out, I suddenly felt sad. Deeply sad. Like I was intruding on someone else's memories. I remember saying to Evan, "These are the people from my dream. I swear to you, this is them." He kind of gave me that look, like he believed me, but he didn't totally know what to do with that information. I couldn't stop thinking, I wish I could find their family. Someone should have this. This belongs to them. But it didn't feel evil in any way. Just sad. Lonely, almost. So I kept it there. The very next day, there's a knock at our front door. I open it, and there's this older man standing there. Late 70s, maybe. Kind eyes, work-worn hands. He introduces himself as Jack and says, kind of shyly, "Hey, I'm a handyman. I live not too far from here. Just wondering if you needed any help with repairs or yard work. I used to live on this property a long time ago." And in my head, I'm just going, you have got to be kidding me. I ask, "You used to live here? Like, in the old farmhouse?" He nods and smiles, but it's this bittersweet smile. "Yeah, that old place out back, that was my childhood home. My parents raised us there." At that point, I'm practically buzzing. I tell him, "Jack, I think I have something that belongs to you." I invite him in, go to the bookshelf, and pick up the photo album. My hands were actually shaking a little as I handed it over. He looks at the cover for a second, then opens it, and he just breaks. His eyes flood with tears, and he presses his fingers to one of the pictures. He's whispering, "Oh my God, Mom, Dad." He tells me his family had been looking for that album for years. They thought it was lost forever, misplaced during a move when the house changed owners. We just stood there for a moment, me watching him reconnect with these faces on the page. His parents as a young couple, him and his siblings as kids in front of the house. Christmas, birthdays, random, ordinary days. I told him quietly about the dream I'd had, about the couple waking me up, asking me to find something, about seeing them in those photos. He didn't laugh. He didn't look at me like I was crazy. He just nodded and said very softly, "That sounds like something they'd do. They were always trying to hold us all together." After a while, he thanked me over and over. Then he took the album, still wiping his eyes, and headed back down the steps. I watched him walk away, clutching that book like it was the most precious thing in the world. That night, I had another dream. The same couple appeared again, this time not beside my bed, but standing in front of this bright, warm light. The kind of light that doesn't hurt your eyes, it just sort of wraps around you. They were smiling. All that heaviness and sadness I'd felt before, it was gone. They looked peaceful, grateful. I didn't hear them speak with their mouths exactly, but I heard the words as clearly as if someone had whispered them in my ear. "Thank you." And then they turned toward the light and walked into it together. I never saw them again in my dreams after that. I never ran into Jack again either. He just disappeared back into his life, I guess, with his parents' memories back in his hands where they belonged. Every now and then I still think about them, the couple, the old house, that strange little chain of events. And I really do believe that whatever was left unfinished for them, it isn't unfinished anymore. I think they got what they needed. And I think, wherever they are now, they're happy. I've had other things happen on that property, some of them not so gentle, not so easy to talk about. Maybe I'll share those someday. But this one? This one feels like a goodbye that finally got to be said. So, what do you think about ghost tours? Personally, I love them. Not because I'm obsessed with ghosts or anything like that, but because they make history feel a little more alive. Or, I guess, unalive. Whenever I travel, if the city offers a ghost tour, I'm absolutely that person who signs up. A couple of years ago, I took one in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've got to be honest with you, it wasn't the best one I've ever done. I'd done tours in places like Savannah and New Orleans that were way more dramatic and spooky. This one in Raleigh felt kind of mild. It might have just been our guide, though. His name was Marcus. Nice guy, but not exactly dripping with theatrical flair. Anyway, we're near the end of the night, maybe the last 2 or 3 stops. The group had just walked a few blocks from this old historic house, one of those beautiful white homes with the big columns, down toward the state capitol building. It was a warm autumn night, a little breezy, and everyone was kind of tired but in good spirits. Marcus starts into his usual spiel about the Capitol. Who designed it, the fires, the rumors about some lawmaker's ghost pacing the halls at night. When, suddenly, this woman in our group just breaks down crying. Like, full-on sobbing. It completely cuts him off. He stops mid-sentence and just looks at her, and the whole group kind of freezes. You know that awkward moment where everyone pretends they're not staring, but absolutely everyone is staring. That was us. But to their credit, people were really gentle about it. No eye-rolling, no, ugh, come on. Just concern. Marcus walks over to her and asks, softly, if she's okay. She can't even get a word out at first. She's shaking, covering her face. Her shoulders are just heaving. Her name, I later found out, was Linda. One of the people with her, her adult son, Daniel, starts rubbing her back, trying to comfort her. The rest of us are just standing there in this weird, heavy silence, in front of a government building at like 10:30 at night. After a few minutes, she calms down enough to breathe normally again. Marcus gently pulls her a little aside, and they have this quick, quiet conversation out of earshot. You can see him nodding, asking a couple of questions, really listening. Then they come back over to us, and Marcus says, So, Linda would like to share what just happened, if that's okay with everyone. Of course we all nod. At that point, the tour about haunted politicians suddenly feels like the least interesting thing on the menu. So Linda takes a breath, wipes her face with a tissue, and starts talking. She tells us that her dad passed away about a year before. He'd been sick for a long time, in and out of the hospital, and he spent his last days in a small hospice center just outside the city. On his last night, she sat by his bed and made him promise, really made him promise, that if there was anything after this life, he would find a way to let her know he was okay. Not in a vague, I'll send you a sign sort of way, but something that felt like him, something she would recognize. Fast forward to that night on the tour. She said that as we left the historic house and started walking toward the Capitol, she suddenly felt this presence. That's the word she used. Presence. Not like she saw anything, not yet. Just that the air around her changed. She felt this wave of warmth and safety roll over her, like a heavy, comforting blanket. And along with it came this very familiar feeling, the sort of quiet peace she used to feel when she was a kid and her dad would sit with her during thunderstorms. But then, when we stopped in front of the Capitol and Marcus started his story, she looked up toward the building, and that's when she says she saw him. There, against the darker part of the building, she saw the silhouette of a man, her father's height, her father's build, standing just on the edge of the light. Not fully detailed, not like watching a movie, but enough for her to recognize him. She said he raised one hand and placed it over his heart, and then brought both hands together in front of his lips, in that little prayer gesture he always used to do when he wanted to show gratitude or say a quiet thank you. Apparently, it was a little habit of his, something small and specific that only their family really knew. And when she saw that, she said, her knees almost gave out. She told us, "I just knew, right then, that he was keeping his promise, that he was okay, that he'd crossed over, whatever that means, and he took the time to tell me." And then, just like that, the figure was gone. While she was telling us this, her son Daniel and the friend who'd come with them both started tearing up too. None of them looked like they were putting on a show. It felt raw, real, like we were intruding on this very personal moment that somehow we'd all been invited into. Marcus, our guide, stood there listening with his mouth slightly open, holding his little lantern like he'd forgotten he was on the clock. When she finished, he said he'd been doing ghost tours for over 10 years and had never had anything like that happen on one of his routes. You could tell he was trying to be respectful and sincere, but I also got the sense he was a bit thrown. This was way beyond the usual "orbs showed up in my photo" kind of thing he was used to. He tried to pick the tour back up afterward, but the whole energy had shifted. Nobody really cared about the ghost of some long-dead official pacing the hallways anymore. We were all still back there with Linda and her dad, standing in that quiet space between grief and relief. After a few more sentences of his rehearsed story, Marcus just kind of sighed and said, "You know what? I think we're going to end the tour here tonight." He thanked us all for coming and told Linda privately that he hoped she found some peace in what she'd experienced. We all drifted off into the night in little clusters, talking softly. Some people offered their condolences. Others just gave her those small, understanding smiles you share with strangers when words feel inadequate. Here's the thing, though, and I'll be honest with you because that's why I'm telling this story. I don't want to downplay whatever closure Linda might have found. If that moment helped her soften the sharp edges of her grief, then it was important. Part of me absolutely wants to believe her dad reached out from wherever he is and kept his promise in the most him way possible. But another part of me wonders if her mind created that experience for her. Grief can be so powerful, and the human brain is incredibly good at giving us the stories we need in order to heal. We were on a ghost tour at night, in front of this dramatic old building, talking about spirits and tragic deaths. If there's ever a time for your subconscious to stage a meaningful scene, that's it. So did we witness something genuinely supernatural? Or did we witness the moment her heart finally allowed itself to feel at peace? I don't know. What I do know is that for Linda, it was real. Her hands were shaking. Her voice cracked. Her son held her like he'd watched her carry that weight for a long time. Whether it was her father's spirit or her mind's way of keeping his promise for him, it gave her the comfort she'd been waiting for. Odd place for it to happen, maybe, but I guess grief doesn't really care where you are, on your couch, in a hospital, or standing under the streetlights in front of a state capitol, listening for ghosts. So, I want to tell you something that's been freaking me out, and I really just need you to listen for a bit. For most of my life, I never really dreamed. Like, I'd close my eyes and it was just this blank nothing until my alarm went off. No nightmares, no flying dreams, nothing. Just off and then on again. Then about 2 months ago, I moved into my boyfriend Eli's apartment. And since then, it's like something flipped a switch in my brain. Or in the house. I'm not sure which. Before I get to the really recent stuff, I need to go back to the first weird thing that happened. It was sometime late last year. I want to say around October or November 2024. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember the feeling. Eli loves horror movies, like lives for them. Me, I'm a bit more cautious. It's not just that they're scary. I always had this fear that horror movies carry, I don't know, bad energy? Like they soak into you somehow. But I wanted to make him happy, so I said, okay, let's watch one. He put on this really intense foreign horror film about possession. I won't go into too much detail, but it was heavy. Lots of curses, demons, chanting, that kind of thing. The whole time I felt off. My chest felt tight, my skin felt prickly, and I kept wanting to look away, but I didn't, because he was enjoying it, and I didn't want to be a buzzkill. We finished the movie, turned off the lights, and went to sleep. A few hours later, I woke up. Only it was wrong. I felt awake, but it was like I didn't have eyes. Everything was just black. No shapes, no shadows, just darkness. But I could move. I could feel the bed under me, feel the blanket, feel Eli's warmth beside me. So I reached out to hug him, just wrapping my arm around his waist like I always do. And then he yelled. He shouted, "What are you doing?" Like really startled, and his voice snapped me fully awake. My vision came back all at once, and I looked down and saw my hand on his stomach. And there were scratch marks, deep ones. His skin was torn, and I could see beads of blood. I just froze. I had no memory of scratching him. I didn't feel my nails drag across his skin. I didn't feel that resistance you get when you accidentally scratch someone. Nothing. It was like my body did something and my mind wasn't there for it. That was the first time I felt like, okay, something isn't right. Fast forward to this year. Around late June 2025, everything escalated. I started dreaming. Not just regular dreams, lucid dreams. Not the fun kind either. I couldn't control the world around me, but I was fully aware I was dreaming. I could think, I could talk, I could move, but the rules weren't mine. It started with these loops, false awakenings. I'd wake up in bed with Eli next to me, but we weren't in his apartment. We were in this unfamiliar house. Everything looked normal enough, sunlight coming in, furniture, the usual, but something felt shifted. I'd get up, walk around, maybe check my phone, do normal things, and then at some point, I'd lie back down. And then I'd wake up again. Same bed, same unfamiliar house, same sequence of normal stuff. The first time this happened, I think I looped maybe 5 times before I actually woke up in my real bed, in the real apartment. After that, these loops became regular. Not every night, but often enough that I started dreading sleep. Then things got worse. One night, about a week later, I had this dream where I was being chased by these things. I can't even describe them properly, like shifting shadows with too many limbs. I was terrified. My heart was pounding, even though I knew it was a dream. And in the dream, I tried something. I forced myself to sleep. Like, I lay down inside the dream and told myself, go to sleep. Just sleep. And somehow, I did. I felt that dropping sensation, like when you drift off on a really bad day. When I woke up, I was back in that same strange house. Only this time, I could tell instantly that it wasn't real. Everything had that too sharp texture dreams sometimes have. The colors were slightly off. The air felt thick. I pinched my arm to check, and instead of pain, I got this weird, tingly numbness, like when your foot falls asleep. That's when I knew for sure. I was still dreaming. That night, I looped again and again. waking up in the same house, going through some variation of a day, realizing I was in a dream, and then snapping out into another one. I counted 29 loops before I woke up for real. After that, a new pattern started. There was this man who kept appearing in my dreams. At first, he looked just like Eli. Same hair, same build, same way of standing with his weight on one leg. But when I looked closely, little things were wrong. His eyes were slightly the wrong shade. His smile was a bit too wide, or his voice had this weird echo to it. It was like someone had studied my boyfriend and tried to copy him, but didn't quite get all the details right. This thing started giving me tests. Sometimes they were like quizzes, riddles, logic puzzles, questions that made my brain hurt. Other times they were physical, having to move objects a certain way, climb something, push through invisible resistance. I can't remember the exact details now, just the feeling of being constantly challenged and judged. He told me, and I don't remember if he said it out loud or if I just knew, that if I got everything 100% correct, I'd be allowed to wake up. And weirdly, it seemed true. There was one time I solved everything he gave me. Every question, every task. I finished the last one, and the moment I did, the dream snapped like a rubber band, and I was suddenly awake in my real bed, heart racing, drenched in sweat. Another time, I messed up one part. Just one. I felt it. I knew I got it wrong. And instead of waking up, I got thrown into another loop. Different quiz, different tasks, same fake Eli watching me. Now, today, this is the one that really shook me. In the dream, I woke up already in the middle of something. There was no gentle beginning, no build-up. I just became aware, and when I did, I realized this thing was on top of me. It looked, at first, like Eli, but my body knew it wasn't him. The way it moved, the way it felt leaning over me, everything in me recoiled. I tried to push it away, tried to fight, but my arms felt like they were moving through syrup. I could feel everything it was doing, and none of it was okay. I knew I hadn't agreed to any of it. I knew I was being violated. I remember thinking, even inside the dream, this isn't him. This isn't him. This isn't him. Eventually it stopped. Not because I made it stop, just because it decided it was done. And then, just like that, the scene changed.
And then they weren't.
They were just gone, like someone deleted them. The fake Eli came back and gave me this strange watch. It looked normal at first, like something you'd buy in a store, but when I looked closer, the face of it was some kind of shifting puzzle. Symbols sliding around, numbers rearranging themselves. He told me I needed to solve it. I remember at least 2 loops there, maybe more. There's one whole loop I just can't recall at all. It's like that part of my memory has been erased. Then I shifted into what I think was the final loop. This time, instead of appearing in a house or room, I became aware in this in-between place. I didn't really have a body. I couldn't feel my arms or legs. The only part of me that existed was my head, and it was being dipped in and out of water. When my head went underwater, everything changed. I could see these massive structures that looked kind of like skyscrapers, but they weren't quite buildings. They were stacked, layered, glowing from the inside. Each window was pouring out bright white or blue light, and behind all of it was this endless blue horizon. It didn't feel like a city. It felt like data, like some kind of enormous archive. My brain labeled it as a data center, even though it was underwater and made no logical sense. Every time my head dipped below the surface, I'd feel this shift in the atmosphere, like I was being scanned or sorted. Then my head came back up, and I wasn't in the water anymore. I was in a body again, a vessel is the word that came to mind. I could feel weight, gravity, pain, and I had this strong sense that I could choose to leave that body if I wanted. Like I could just step out, disconnect. For a second, I tried. I felt this terrifying pulling sensation, like my soul was peeling away from my skin. It was the most intense vulnerability I've ever felt. Like if I went any further, there'd be no coming back. And I don't know how I knew this, but I had this instinct that if I left, I wouldn't wake up somewhere better. I'd wake up somewhere worse, or not at all. So I panicked and let myself sink back into the body. When I did, the scene solidified around me. I looked down at my arm and just froze. From my elbow downward, there was another arm stitched onto mine, like someone had attached it, Frankenstein style. I could feel the weight of it, the tug of the stitches. Every tiny movement sent sharp, burning pain up my arm. The skin was swollen and angry, and the seam where the two arms met was raw and messed up. Then this assistant appeared. Not the fake Eli, but someone who worked for him, I guess. They looked tired and bored, like this was just another day at the office. They told me to walk over to the fake Eli so we could run a test or do an experiment, something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the dread. This heavy, sinking knowing that whatever they were about to do to me was going to hurt. A lot. I started walking toward him, feeling every stitch pull in my arm, my whole body screaming that this was wrong, wrong, wrong. And then I heard it. Eli's real voice. He was calling my name. Not from the dream, from outside it. I realized I was on a call with him in real life. We'd fallen asleep while we were still connected. His voice cut through the entire scene like a knife. The dream melted, like when you wipe steam off a mirror, and I woke up for real. In my bed, phone beside me, his voice in my ear asking, "Are you okay? You were making weird noises." I just lay there, shaking. I don't have answers. I don't have some big conclusion. I just know that I went from never dreaming at all to being trapped in these looped, lucid nightmares with someone wearing my boyfriend's face and making me earn my right to wake up. And if you've listened all the way through this, thank you. Really. Even just telling someone makes me feel a tiny bit less alone in it. Okay, so let me set the scene for you. I live way out in the sticks. Like, if you missed the last gas station, that's on you, because my place is another 20 minutes past that. It's just me, a handful of farm animals, too many reptiles, and my big goofy Belgian Malinois, whose name is Jasper. Jasper is about 95 pounds of pure muscle and unfiltered joy. He looks like he could end you, but in reality, he loves everyone and everything, except coyotes, snakes, and the occasional possum that wanders too close to the chicken coop. Out here, he's kind of become the unofficial mascot for our little EMS station. I work these long, multi-day shifts as a paramedic, so sometimes I'm gone for a couple nights. When that happens, Jasper takes his job of ranch security officer extremely seriously. The firefighters swing by to check on him, and a couple of my neighbors will stop in, give him treats, throw a ball so he's not lonely. I've got cameras all around the place so I can peek in on him when I'm at the station and make sure everything's all right. Now, Jasper has a routine. Around 9:30 or 10 every night, he does his patrol. He runs the fence line, checks the goats and the chickens, gives a suspicious stare to the tree line, and then he comes back and flops on the front porch like a furry gargoyle. When he's finally ready to come in, he does this very specific thing with the back door. He throws his shoulder into it and drags one paw down the frame. It makes this loud, scraping thump that you could pick out of a hurricane. I call it the Jasper noise. So anyway, this was last Thursday. I let Jasper out for his usual patrol. I hear him take off across the yard, nails on the deck, then silence as he disappears into the dark. I head to the bathroom, take my time, then wander back to my chair in the living room. I'm working on a new reptile enclosure design on my laptop, trying to figure out where I'm putting the next lizard condo, you know? I'm just kind of half focused, half zoned out when I glance down the hallway. And Jasper is lying there on the floor. He's on his side, facing away from me, stretched out like he always does after a big run. His breathing is a little off, not panting, but these deep, slightly irregular breaths. If you're in the medical field, it's just enough to make you go, okay, that's odd, without quite being an emergency. My brain does this quick little stutter, because I did not let him back in. And there is no way into my house that doesn't involve a locked door or a closed window. No dog door, no open anything, just me, and apparently, Jasper. So I do what I always do to get his attention. I clack my tongue against my cheek. He reacts exactly like Jasper would. He lifts his head, gets up slowly, and starts walking down the hallway away from me, toward the back room where I keep most of the reptile racks and an old sofa. He's moving calmly, like he's just going to find a spot to crash. And as this Jasper is walking away down the hallway, I hear it. The Jasper noise. That exact shoulder thump, paw scrape combination, loud and clear at the back door. I freeze for a second. Then I walk to the back door, and through the glass I see Jasper. Outside. Tail wagging, ears perked, doing his happy little tight circle because he knows I'm about to let him in. That's my dog, no question. Tongue out, eyes bright, excited to see me. That's the real Jasper. And there's no way out of that room. No doors to the outside. Just the sofa and the cages. At this point, my heart rate has joined a drum line. I clack at the Jasper outside, and he gives his usual quick little yip like, "Hey, open the door already." Exact same sound he always makes. That's all the confirmation I need. I unlock the door and let him in. And as soon as he crosses the threshold, everything about him changes. He goes from happy doofus to full-on tactical mode. Hackles straight up. Low, ugly growl in his chest. He barrels past me down the hallway, nails digging into the floor, barking like he's ready to tear something apart. He rushes into the back room. Nothing. No dog. No raccoon. No person. Just the sofa, the reptile racks, and air that suddenly feels way too heavy. Jasper checks under the furniture, behind the racks, every corner. Then he does another sweep. And another. For the next hour, he is on high alert, pacing, sniffing, growling at empty doorways, running back to the hallway, back to the back room, then to each window like he's trying to find whatever it was he smelled or sensed. I didn't let him outside again that night. I didn't want whatever this was to become a game of chase. That was my first real run-in with what I've started calling Other Jasper. I've seen it twice since. The last time was just after midnight, a couple of nights ago. I'm half asleep, scrolling on my phone, when I hear it at the back door. The bump and scratch. The Jasper noise. Exact rhythm, exact weight. Real Jasper is already inside, asleep at the foot of my bed. At the sound, he snaps awake like someone flipped a switch. He doesn't even look at me first. He's on his feet, hackles up, teeth bared, that deep, furious bark he only uses when he thinks something is seriously wrong. He charges the back door like he's ready to go straight through it. I get up, heart in my throat, and flip on the porch light. There's nothing there. No dog, no shadows moving. Just the empty porch and the yard beyond it. And here's the part that really gets me. Whatever Other Jasper is, it doesn't trigger my alarms. I've got motion sensors and cameras, good ones. They'll pick up a moth flying too close or a stray cat sneaking around. But every time I've heard that noise and gone back to check the recordings, there's nothing. No alerts. No motion detected. No figure. No dog. Just the sound, and the way my very real Jasper reacts like something is trespassing in his world. So I'm looking into getting a different kind of setup. Maybe some trail cameras, a few more angles, see if I can catch anything that my regular system is missing. Part of me is curious. Part of me really isn't. I'm not terrified exactly. I've dealt with enough real-world emergencies that I don't rattle easily, and I'm pretty confident in my ability to handle a problem if it decides to become tangible. But I will say this. If you ever come visit me out here, especially after dark, do me a favor. If you see a dog outside that looks like Jasper, big Malinois, serious eyes, murder dog face, don't just assume it's him. Don't go petting him or calling his name. Shoot me a text or give me a call first. I'll tell you whether Jasper is supposed to be inside or out. Because my dog, my real Jasper, he absolutely does not trust whatever that other one is. And I've learned to trust his instincts. So, let me tell you about something that happened a few nights ago. Even now, just thinking about it, I can feel my shoulders tense up. It was a Thursday night, close to midnight. I was curled up on the old sofa in my little cabin, reading a book and trying not to think about the wind rattling the trees outside. It was one of those quiet nights where the whole house feels like it's holding its breath. And then, someone pounded on the front door. I actually jumped. The book slipped out of my hands and slapped onto the floor. No one ever comes by that late. Out here, in this area outside Hammervik, if someone's at your door after midnight, it's either an emergency or something you really don't want to deal with. My first thought was that maybe a neighbor's car had broken down on the road. So, a little worried but trying to be sensible, I got up and headed toward the hallway. The only light on was the lamp in the living room behind me, but the hallway outside the cabin has this cold fluorescent light that spills in through the glass of the front door. It lit up the veranda just enough for me to make out shapes. I stepped closer and peered through the little window in the door. What I saw made my stomach drop. Pressed close to the glass was a chalky white face, too pale to look alive. Most of it was hidden under a dark hood, but the lower part of the face was clearly visible. A wide mouth, lips almost too thick, and teeth that looked blackened and long, like they were rotting or sharpened. The chin was unnaturally long, smooth, completely hairless. It didn't look like any human face I'd ever seen. The eyes were in shadow at first, and honestly, I was grateful for that. I just froze there, staring. Then it hit me what I was looking at. I'd heard the stories. Everybody in the area has. Rumors about a creature wandering at night around Hammervik, and that its nest was somewhere deep in Norham Forest. People had found animals in the pastures near Bjorkdal, mutilated, drained of blood. The kind of thing people mention in low voices and then laugh off because it sounds ridiculous. They call it the vampire of Hammervik. And now, God help me, it was standing outside my front door. Before I could move, it spoke, this strange, guttural voice that sounded like it was dragging up the words from somewhere wet and broken. "Let me in. I'm freezing out here," it said. "I just need to borrow a phone." The way it talked, the mouth didn't move quite right. When it spoke, the lips pulled back too far, and I could see those long, black teeth. It wasn't a normal grin. It was like every word it said tasted bad. I stumbled backward and nearly bumped into the shelf behind me. My heart was hammering. The thing stepped closer to the glass, angling its face so I could see more. That's when I saw its eyes. Dark red rims around bloodshot whites, like they were raw from crying or not sleeping for years. And when it stared at me, it was like its gaze reached straight through the glass, trying to hook onto mine, drag me in. I could almost feel it pulling at my will, trying to reel me toward the lock. "Open," it rasped, more forcefully. "Open the door. I'm freezing. Help me." The handle on the door jerked, up and down, like it was testing the lock. The wood of the door creaked as it leaned its full weight against it. The whole frame shuddered. For a moment, I felt this awful urge to just do what it said. Open up. Let it in. A weird calm started to spread through me, like someone had turned down my fear with a dial. And then, almost like someone whispered it in my ear, I remembered. The crucifix. I tore my eyes away from that creature's stare. Honestly, it felt like ripping Velcro, and ran back through the living room into my bedroom. I could still hear the handle rattling, like it wanted to tear itself off the door. The pounding started again, harder this time, and the cabin walls trembled. In the bedroom, I yanked open the top drawer. Nothing. Second drawer. Socks, receipts, useless junk. My hands felt clumsy, like I was wearing gloves. Finally, in the bottom drawer, under a tangled scarf, my fingers closed around the cool shape of the crucifix. The door banged again. The sound echoed down the hallway. I wrapped the chain around my hand, clutching the little cross so tightly it dug into my palm, and walked back toward the hall. My legs were shaking. I could feel them. When I stepped into view of the door again, the creature was still there, pressed up against the glass. It looked even more desperate now, lips peeled back over those awful teeth. I held the crucifix out at arm's length in front of me. My voice surprised me. I didn't think I'd be able to speak, but the words just came. "In the name of Jesus Christ," I said as loud and clear as I could. "Depart from here. Leave this place, you unclean thing." As I spoke, something strange happened. My right arm began to tingle, then thrum, like electricity running through it. A white glow started at my shoulder and moved down, pulsing toward my hand, into the crucifix. The little metal cross lit up, not like a reflection, but from within, like it had swallowed lightning. The hallway exploded in bright white light. It was like someone had set off a camera flash that never faded. The air felt charged, humming, and my arm pulsed like I'd grabbed a live wire. Outside, the light hit the creature full in the face. It shrieked. I'll never forget that sound. It let go of the handle and threw its arms over its head, stumbling backward off the porch. I could just make out its contorted shape, writhing in the glow spilling through the window. It scrambled to its feet, turned, and bolted down the path that leads from my cabin to the main road. In a few seconds, it was swallowed by the darkness between the trees. The only thing left was the echo of that horrible screech fading into the night. Slowly, the pulse in my arm eased. The light from the crucifix dimmed, then went out, leaving just the ordinary yellowish glow from my living room lamp. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, listening. Nothing. Just the wind in the trees again. The door handle was still, the wood no longer creaking. It was gone. After a while, I locked the door again, double-checked it actually, 2 or 3 times, and finally allowed myself to breathe properly. My hand was still trembling around the crucifix. My first thought was, I should call the police. My second thought was, right, and what exactly am I going to tell them? Hi, yes, hello, a vampire just tried to get into my cabin. In the end, I did call, but I said there had been an attempted break-in. I gave a vague description. Tall person in a hood, aggressive, rattling the door, then ran off toward the forest. They said they'd send a car to drive through the area and keep an eye out. I didn't mention glowing crucifixes or red-rimmed eyes. I may be scared, but I'm not stupid. The next night, when it was time to go to work, I realized something else. I work nights. That means going out into the dark to get to my car. Since that night, I've made it a habit to park my car as close to the front steps as I can. I don't leave big gaps of shadow anymore if I can help it. Before I step outside, I make sure the crucifix is in my hand, not in some drawer, not hanging on a hook. Right there, fingers wrapped around it. But I'll tell you this, especially if you live anywhere near Hammervik or those forests. Don't open your door after dark to anyone you don't recognize. If someone's out there, insisting, begging, trying to talk you into it, trust your instincts, not their voice. And maybe, just maybe, keep something holy nearby. Just in case the stories aren't just stories after all. Alright, so, let me tell you about the one thing that still makes me second guess myself. I've worked in the funeral business for about 8 years now. I'm not religious, I don't believe in an afterlife, and I usually roll my eyes at ghost shows. I've always considered myself an atheist and a skeptic through and through. But there's this one funeral home I worked at where things were just off. Most days it was subtle. That feeling like someone's watching you when you're locking up, the hairs standing up on the back of your neck for no good reason, or hearing footsteps overhead when you know you're the only one in the building. You learn to shrug it off. Old buildings creak, pipes make noise, your brain fills in the gaps. But there's one day I can't shrug off. I've tried. I still can't. It was a slow afternoon. All of us who were working that day were downstairs in this little office off the crematory. Me, my manager, and 2 coworkers, Maria and Devin. The front doors were locked because we weren't open to the public at that time, and we have a door chime that rings every single time someone opens any exterior door. It's annoyingly loud, which is the point. We were all sitting there just talking, paperwork spread out, coffee cups everywhere. Nobody was upstairs. Nobody was by the entrance. Every door was locked. We were basically tucked away in the safest, quietest corner of the building. And then we hear it. From directly above us, at the top of the staircase that leads up to the funeral director's office, we hear someone moving around, like the floorboard creaks you get when a person is shifting their weight. We all go quiet and kind of look at each other like, did we unlock the door and forget? And then we hear it. 3 clear, deliberate knocks. Not a boom, not something falling over, not pipes. It was that exact polite, "Hi, I'm here. Can I come in?" kind of knocking. The same way a family would knock if they came in and weren't sure where to go. All of us froze for a second. We all heard it. My manager, Mr. Lee, immediately stood up and said, "That's someone at the office door." No hesitation. We all just assumed a family had somehow gotten in. He goes up the stairs, and Devin heads toward the hallway to check the front door, and Maria says, "That's weird. Why didn't the chime go off?" So she walks over to the little box on the wall where the door chime is, thinking maybe the batteries died or someone turned it off. A few seconds later, Devin calls down the hallway, "Front door's still locked." Maria checks the chime and goes, "It's on. It's working. I just opened the back door to test it. It chimed." I'm still downstairs in the office, just kind of sitting there with my heart going a little faster, listening to them move around. Then Mr. Lee comes back down the stairs, looking confused. He says, "There's nobody up there. Door's locked. Offices are empty." So now we've got all of us accounted for in the same room, no one at the front door, no one upstairs, the chime working perfectly, and no cars in the lot besides our own. But the 4 of us all heard those footsteps, and that very specific, intentional knocking at the door at the top of the stairs. We just kind of stood there in the hallway, looking at each other like, okay, So what did we just hear? That's why that day sticks with me. It wasn't just me, half asleep on a night shift, hearing things. There were multiple witnesses. We all heard the same sound, interpreted it the same way. A normal human knocking exactly where a customer would knock if they were looking for us. And yet, no one was there. No open door, no chime, no car pulling away, nothing. That was just one incident at that funeral home. There were plenty of smaller things. Doors that would slam when there wasn't a draft. Those faint, muffled voices you'd swear were coming from the next room when you know the building is empty. That really specific feeling like someone is standing right behind you, close enough that you can almost feel the air shift. And then you turn around and it's just hallway. What gets me is that different people experienced those things without us all swapping ghost stories first. Maria once came downstairs pale and said, "I swear someone was right behind me by the arrangement room, but when I turned around, no one was there." I just nodded because I'd had the same experience in a different part of the building and hadn't told anyone. Now, I'm still not ready to say, yes, ghosts are definitely real. My logical brain wants an explanation. Faulty wiring, acoustics, old wood, stress, something. I want there to be a clean, rational reason. But I'll be honest, that knocking at the top of the stairs, with all of us hearing it, all of us reacting like it was a real person, and then finding absolutely nothing, that's the closest I've ever come to thinking, maybe there's something we don't understand going on here. And if there are ghosts, I have to laugh a little and ask the same question I always do. Of all the things they could do, why just knock on doors? Okay, so let me just tell this to you the way I remember it. When I was a little kid, my younger sister Lena and I shared a tiny bedroom. We had these metal bunk beds that creaked every time you moved. I slept on the top bunk, she was on the bottom. Back then, I had sleep paralysis and nightmares a lot. Almost every night, really. I'd wake up frozen, unable to move, with this heavy feeling that something was in the room with us. Sometimes I'd see a shadowy, human-shaped figure standing in the corner or by the door, always when I was paralyzed or right after I snapped out of it. Eventually, I learned to soothe myself. I'd lie there, heart pounding, and whisper in my head, "Monsters aren't real. This is just my brain. It's just a sleep thing." And as an adult, I know that, yeah, hallucinations during sleep paralysis are common. That part, at least, makes sense. But there was this one night that still doesn't fit neatly in that box. That night, the feeling in the room was different. Way more intense. It wasn't just that vague sense of being watched. It felt like something had stepped into the room. The air felt heavier. I remember staring at the ceiling, absolutely still, trying not to breathe too loud. I didn't cry. I never did back then. I wasn't the kid who screamed for my parents. I was just quietly terrified. I don't know how long I lay there, just trying to calm my breathing and convince myself it was all in my head. Eventually, the feeling eased up a bit, enough that my body started to relax. And then I heard Lena. She was on the bottom bunk, and I could hear her sobbing, soft at first, then harder. I didn't say anything, but it really threw me because she never cried like that at night. A minute later, the bunk shifted, and she climbed up to my bed, still crying, and just wrapped her arms around me. I remember asking, "What's wrong?" even though I think I already knew. She just clung to me, shaking, and as she held on to me, I started crying too, because in that moment, it felt like she had felt it too. Whatever that thing was in the room. And then we heard it. This low, loud growl came from the direction of the doorway. It didn't sound like an animal. It didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard in our house. It sounded wrong. like something trying to imitate a growl. We both turned our heads at the same time and looked at the bedroom doorway. There, crawling over the threshold, was this humanoid, shadowy figure, darker than the dark around it. And it had red eyes, like two embers, low to the ground, moving towards us. Lena and I screamed at the exact same time. The second we screamed, we heard my dad's footsteps pounding down the hallway toward our room. The figure stopped, turned away from us, and slipped back out through the doorway like it had been caught. My dad burst in, flicked on the light, and demanded, "What's going on?" We were both talking over each other, trying to explain, pointing toward the door, telling him about the shadow thing on the floor, the red eyes, the growl. He insisted it was just a reflection, maybe from the hallway. He said that's all it was, some light, and that we were scaring ourselves. But there was no light on in the hallway. There was nothing that could have made that red glow. And he said he hadn't heard any growl. Fast forward to when I was about 14. Sleep paralysis and hallucinations came up in some random family conversation. I don't even remember how. I just remember saying, "Yeah, I used to get that a lot." There was this one time when Lena and I both saw something at the door. I started telling the story, and I mentioned the red eyes, and before I even finished, Lena cut in and said, "Wait, I thought that was a dream." So I asked her, "What do you remember?" And she described it almost exactly the way I remembered it. The growl, the shape crawling in, the red eyes, both of us screaming, everything. We were just sitting there, staring at each other, realizing that whatever that was, it wasn't just in my head. At least that part was real to both of us. For more context, we grew up in a really abusive household. There was a lot of fear and tension, a lot of yelling, a lot of walking on eggshells. My dad was abusive toward me and my mom, but for some reason he never laid a hand on Lena. That imbalance, that constant stress, it was just the background noise of our lives. Around that time, I'd figured out something about my sleep paralysis. If I woke up frozen, I had two choices. I could fight as hard as I could to fully wake up, and then I'd be left with this bad feeling hanging over me for a while. Or I could stop fighting it and let myself slip back under. If I didn't fight it, something strange would happen. The moment I let go, I'd see this bright orb appear. It wasn't just a simple ball of light. It had rings around it, and these eyes, lots of eyes, that seemed to move and focus, like it was studying me. It would rush toward me, grab me somehow, and then carry me through this endless dark, straight into a very lucid dream. While it was happening, I'd hear a voice. It wasn't like someone whispering in my ear. It sounded huge, like it filled the space, but it was gentle. It would say, "Be not afraid." And every time it said that, the panic in my chest would ease a little. In those dreams, it would take me to places. Some of them were places I recognize now as an adult. Cities and landscapes I hadn't seen in real life back then. Even other countries with terrain I definitely didn't know about as a kid. I couldn't see the orb in those dreams, but I knew it was there, right beside me, talking to me. Sometimes I'd ask, "Am I dreaming?" And it would say, "Yes." I'd ask, "Can I wake up?" And it would say, "Not yet." And then, when the dream had run its course, the voice would finally say I could wake up. I'd snap back to my body, and here's the weird part. Instead of feeling terrified like I did after the shadow figures, I'd feel safe, calm, like I'd just been watched over. As a kid, I didn't have any framework for that, other than vague church stuff. I grew up going to church every Sunday, but all I ever saw were the typical angel images, human-looking figures with wings, maybe a halo. I didn't connect the orb and the voice with anything religious at the time. I just thought it was something my brain made up so I wouldn't freak out. It wasn't until I was an adult that I stumbled across these old descriptions of angels from biblical texts. These beings described as wheels within wheels, full of eyes, surrounded by light. And that hit me kind of hard, because that's exactly what I'd been seeing. I also realized how often the phrase, "be not afraid," shows up in those stories. So, in my mind, that was an angel. That's how I've chosen to understand it. The other thing, the thing my sister and I saw crawling over the threshold with the red eyes, that's what I still don't have a neat label for. The easy word is demon, right? That's what most people jump to. But I honestly don't know. I've heard all kinds of ideas. Some people say it's just a shared hallucination. Some say it's an entity attracted to negative energy. Others say it's something that feeds off fear. All I really know is this. In a house full of screaming and fear and violence, my sister and I both saw something that shouldn't have been there. Something that growled. Something that watched us. And in that same season of my life, when everything felt unsafe and chaotic, something else, something bright and full of eyes, would show up, tell me, "Be not afraid," and carry me through the dark until it was safe to wake up again. I'm not asking anyone to believe what I believe. I'm just telling you what happened to me, as honestly as I can. Okay, so let me tell you one of my favorite stories that my mom, Claire, used to tell me. She grew up in this tiny coastal town in eastern Canada, in an old creaky house that sat on a hill overlooking the bay. The kind of place where the wind never really stops and the fog just lives there. From the time she was a kid, she swore that house was haunted. Not in a cute Halloween way, but in the "something is definitely watching you from the corner" kind of way. She has a whole catalog of weird things that happened there when she was a teenager, but this one story has just stayed glued to my brain. So, in their living room, my grandparents had this huge old grandfather clock. You know the kind, towering, dark wood, heavy brass pendulum. It ticked so loudly it practically ran the house. My grandparents jokingly called it King George because they said it ruled over the living room. The clock stood just to the right of the big, sagging couch, and to the left of that couch was this massive front window that looked out over the yard and the gravel driveway. During the day, it was pretty. Sunlight, kids biking by, neighbors walking. At night, though, it just turned into a big, black mirror. You couldn't see out, but you'd swear something could see in. One night, when my mom was about 16, she was sprawled out on that couch, talking on the phone with her friend. Her name was Dana. This was back when the phone had a long cord, and you were basically tethered to the wall if you wanted to talk. They'd been chatting for ages. Homework, gossip, whatever teenage girls talked about back then. The house had that late-night quiet to it. Her younger brother was already in bed, the TV was off, and all you could really hear was the steady, heavy tick-tock, tick-tock of King George in the corner. After a while, though, my mom got this feeling. You know that creeping sense that something's off? Like the air changes before you even know why? She told me it felt exactly like eyes on the back of her neck. Not just one pair, like more than one. She kept glancing at that front window, even though she couldn't see anything but her own reflection and the faint outline of the trees. She tried to brush it off. She joked with Dana, tried to keep talking, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Finally, she said, "Hey, this is gonna sound weird, but I feel like someone's outside or something. I'm gonna hang up, run upstairs, and I'll call you back from my room, okay?" Dana was like, yeah, sure, now I'm freaked out too, thanks." But they laughed it off. So my mom hangs up, puts the receiver back on the hook, and then she bolts. She said she didn't walk, she didn't jog. She sprinted through the hallway and up the staircase, skipping steps 2 at a time. You know that feeling when you're running up the stairs in the dark and you're absolutely sure something is right behind you? That's what she described. She said she could practically feel the back of her neck burning the whole way up. She reaches her bedroom, slams the door behind her, and locks it. Like that little lock is going to do anything against a ghost, but hey, it's something. Immediately, she feels safer. The room is smaller, familiar. Her posters on the wall, the glow of the small lamp on her bedside table. She picks up the extension phone in her room, another old corded one, and calls Dana back. "Okay," she says when Dana answers. "I made it. I'm alive." They both laugh, talk a bit more, and eventually the tension starts to fade. My mom's sitting on the edge of her bed now, legs crossed, phone cord twisted around her fingers, a little click on the line. If you've ever used an old landline, you know that sound. The tiny, crisp click that means someone has picked up another phone in the house. They both go quiet. Dana whispers, "Did someone just pick up?" My mom hears the sound too, clear as day. So she calls out, casual as she can manage. "Dad? Is that you?" Silence. No breathing, no shuffling, just the faint hiss of the line. She tries again. "Mom? Ben?" That's her younger brother. Still nothing. Now both of them are just sitting there, not saying a word, listening. And that's when it starts. Tick, tock. Tick, tock. My mom says the hair on her arms stood straight up because she knew that sound. She'd heard it almost her entire life. But what really got her was that Dana recognized it too. Dana says, really slowly, "Claire, is that your clock?" It was exactly the loud, hollow ticking of King George. The same way it sounded if you were standing right next to it downstairs in the living room. But they were hearing it through the phone line. The clock was nowhere near the upstairs bedroom phones. There was no phone mounted by it. The nearest phone to that clock was the one on the living room wall, a few feet away. But even then, you wouldn't hear it that clearly through the receiver unless someone was literally holding the handset up to the clock case. My mom is sitting there on her bed, frozen, listening to the ticking echoing down the line. She told me it felt like the sound was coming from right beside her ear, like someone was holding the phone just inches from the clock downstairs. And then, just as suddenly as the extra click had come, there was another click. The line went back to normal. The ticking stopped. It was just my mom and Dana again, breathing into the silence. That was it. My mom slammed the phone down, shot out of bed, and ran to her parents' room. She bursts in, panicked, trying to explain. Someone picked up the phone. The clock was on the line. They both heard it. My grandparents got up, a bit annoyed, a bit worried, and checked the house. They looked in on her brother, fast asleep. My grandfather, who worked nights as a paramedic at the local clinic, hadn't used the phone at all. He'd been half dozing with a book in bed. My grandmother hadn't moved from her room. They checked the doors, still locked. Windows closed. The living room empty. The clock just standing there in the corner like it always did. Pendulum swinging, ticking away. In the end, they told her she must have dozed off and dreamed it. You know how adults can be. Tired, practical, not wanting to open the door to anything weird. But the thing is, Dana heard it too. My mom wasn't alone. And Dana had spent enough time at their house to know that clock sound like it was its own person. There was no mistaking it. After that night, my mom said she never looked at King George the same way again. Every time she stepped into that living room, she felt like the clock was aware. Like the ticking wasn't just keeping time anymore, it was watching. She said sometimes, if she sat on the couch by herself, she'd get that same prickling feeling she'd had before she ran upstairs. That sense of 1,000 invisible eyes pressed against the walls, peering at her from all directions. She never sat alone in there late at night after that if she could help it. They sold it to some antique dealer a couple towns over. No one in my family has seen it since. Sometimes I think about that, about some stranger browsing old furniture, seeing this beautiful, towering grandfather clock, thinking, wow, what a great find. They get it home, set it up in their hallway, wind it up, and late one night, when the house is finally quiet, the phone rings.